I'm Alice Loxton and I present documentaries over on History Hit TV. If you're passionate about all things royal history, sign up to History Hit TV. It's like Netflix, but just for history. You've got hours of ad-free documentaries about all aspects of the past. You can get a huge discount for History Hit TV. Make sure you check out the details in the video description and use the code REALROYALTY, all one word, when you sign up. Now, on with the show.
Royal food served on the grandest tables is so much more than just a meal. Historically, these extravagant dishes were created to represent power. They also set fashions. Nowadays, royal food is all about showcasing the best of British. In celebration of royal food,
we know it's the Queen's recipe because we've got it in our own hand.
From the present and the past,
that is proper regal.
we recreate old family favourites.
Now, the Queen Mother had this really wicked trick with these.
What a mess.
We sample royal eating al fresco
Oh, wow. That is what you want.
and revisit the most extravagant times.
Pheasant, stag, turkey, salmon, oysters and turbot dressed in a lobster champagne sauce.
Unbelievable.
This is Royal Recipes.
Hello, I'm Michael Burke and welcome to Royal Recipes. This is Audley End, one of Britain's finest stately homes, built in the style of a royal palace and once owned by a king. In the splendour of the gardens, halls and kitchen of this grandest of country houses, we'll be recreating the food served at the highest royal tables.
And it all starts here with this gem, a royal kitchen maid's cookbook, the only surviving recipe book of its kind in the Royal Archive. This is an exact copy of the original, which is kept at Windsor Castle. Inside, the recipes of Mildred Nichols, who worked at Buckingham Palace in the early 1900s. And for the first time in over 100 years, we'll be bringing these recipes back to life.
This time, we're cooking royal recipes inspired by the days of India and Empire. Historian Dr. Annie Gray heads to the Isle of Wight to discover how Queen Victoria's passion for the Raj got us all hooked on Indian food.
But it's fair to say that Queen Victoria was one of the people to elevate curry to something that truly was fit for a queen.
The chef who was called to Buckingham Palace to create dishes for the Indian president.
I got massive feedback from the guests and the royalty as well.
And chef Paul Ainsworth cooks up curry Prince Harry style.
Prince Harry had this stuff when he was serving in Afghanistan. And the Gurkhas, they'd cook up fiery goat curry.
In the historic kitchen wing, we're returning to the reign of Queen Victoria and the Indian dishes served on her menus.
We're here in the magnificent old kitchen with the magnificent old Paul Ainsworth, Michelin-starred chef. Two British greats.
Yes. Yeah. Queen Victoria.
Queen Victoria and the Indian takeaway. And the popularity of the one owes an awful lot to the popularity of the other. She loved curries, didn't she?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going to cook one of her favourite recipes.
Yeah, one that she really enjoyed, which is a quail and potato curry. And it's absolutely delicious and really simple.
In the Royal Archives, it's where we got the recipe. It's caille aux pommes de terre à l'indienne. They don't call it that, I have to say, at the takeaway.
So what I've done here, Michael, is we're going to get going straight away with a lovely base. So we've got some onions that we've cooked in butter, ghee, just clarified butter, so lovely flavour, and the temperature gets nice and hot. I've added in the curry powder first because I want to cook that out so it's not gritty. We want to really cook that curry powder out.
But you're using curry powder?
Curry powder.
Bit of a cheat, isn't it?
Well, not really. Well, we've got to use a spice.
Yeah.
So the cheat would be getting the jar. We're making our base from scratch. Right. So we've got our garlic in there, our chilli, our curry powder, and our lovely caramelised onions. So now we're just going to turn that heat up a little bit, really get going. Some grated ginger, absolutely delicious, nice and fragrant. I'm just going to grate that in there like so.
But the key to it is the sauce, isn't it?
The key to
and actually curry comes from the Indian curry, which I think means sauce.
Now, this is a really important part of this dish. This is what gives us that wonderful colour of the sauce. And tomatoes, I mean, for me, they play a massive role in cookery itself because they're just so delicious, and that's what gives us that real body and depth, wonderful acidity, nice sweetness. So you can see already we've got this wonderful base starting to form together. So now we're going to add in water, not stock, because we've got that wonderful flavour. Bring that to the boil. And then we're going to add the legs, Michael.
The legs first?
Yeah, the legs are super, super tender, but they need cooking before the breasts. If you think with most animals, Michael, you've got, like, say, duck, chicken, you need to put the legs first because they're going to cook down, because they're the bit on the animal that work the most. And that's it, that's our sauce. So now we would leave that to simmer for about an hour and 10 minutes, and those legs would be beautiful and tender. And
it's pretty exotic for royal food, isn't it?
It
I mean,
is.
the Queen
It
was...
really is.
Queen Victoria really had very exotic taste. They called her the greedy queen, I think, because she liked all this kind of stuff.
Well, it really is a delicious recipe. So, Michael, after an hour of really slow cooking and gentle, gentle simmer, these are our legs that we've done earlier.
Right.
Okay,
right.
and we're just going to pick the meat off. And in the meantime...
It's falling off, isn't it?
Falling off,
Yeah.
absolutely delicious. And in the meantime, we've then blitzed this wonderful sauce that we've made. And what's beautiful is that now we've got this lovely sauce. So could I get you to grate me an apple, please? Yeah, peel it and then grate it. So, bit by bit, Michael, I'm going to add in my beautiful quail leg meat.
Here we go.
We're going to add in our breasts, like so. And if the sauce gets too thick, just let it down with a little bit of water, okay?
You're using water all the time rather than stock, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. Water's so important in cooking, really important, because it's nice and neutral, and sometimes you don't want to confuse flavours. Now you can start to see it's coming together, becoming beautiful and thick. We're going to add in our potatoes. Now, these potatoes have just been partly cooked.
What about the breasts? How long do they take?
Breasts will just literally take a couple of minutes.
Really? In
yeah,
that
because
sauce?
they're so thin. And the potatoes are just taking on that wonderful flavour. Now, if we just take a bit of your apple.
There it is.
Okay, and
Perfectly
all we're going to do,
done, isn't it?
All we're going to do is just grate some. It is perfectly done, absolutely. Now, the apple is giving you fragrant acidity, delicious, especially like a lovely English apple like this, like the Bramley.
It's a beautiful, clean taste, isn't it?
And look, the juices of the apple as well. Yeah, I mean, it really is a delicious curry. Now, that there is cooked, believe it or not. We are cooked.
Those breasts are cooked?
We've got some...
Just a couple of minutes.
As quick as that, just a couple of minutes.
You've got 2 pots on there, Paul. What's in the mystery
Side
one?
dishes. You can't have a beautiful curry without some lovely side dishes. So in here, got some wonderful spinach, pinch of salt, butter. It produces its own steamed spinach because it's got so much water, has a lot of vegetables, over 80% water. Nothing, just in naturally. And you can see, we'll just turn it over. See like that, Michael? And it's just literally wilting down. Delicious vegetable spinach, full of iron. And then, of course, you can't have a curry without rice, so we've got some wonderful steamed rice. Okay?
Is it ready?
Yeah, let's chop some coriander. Let's chop some coriander and we're good to go.
Excellent.
Okay. So...
That bit of finger.
Plenty of herbs. And now we're just going to move that over here and fold it in, and let's plate up. If you just stir that in gently for me, I'm going to get the side dishes ready. So we've got our wonderful steamed rice, our lovely spinach.
It's good to be right over it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay, let's plate up. So we're going to have some lovely spinach.
Yep. Do you do much Indian food yourself?
Yeah, I do, especially stuff like this. I mean, this would be great to do at home with the family. And do you know what I love about Indian food? I love the way that you eat like this, sharing around the table, everyone getting stuck in, passing food around. So we've got that lovely rice.
It is extraordinary, isn't it, when you think that our national dish is now kind of inherited from the subcontinent.
This is my favourite style of curry. I mean, look at that. Apps and the smell.
You don't want it sloshing around.
No, you don't.
And when you did the legs and the breasts separately, does that mean that they're going to taste like different meats?
Yeah, because you've got that lovely braised leg, but then the texture of that breast will be just almost like a steak texture.
Yeah.
Are you ready to taste?
Oh, am I?
Yeah. Some lovely rice. Like like so. Get some. It's just the smell. You see those potatoes just slightly soft as well, cooked all the way through. Nice bit of breast there on top.
And that lovely deep green spinach.
And there we are.
There we go.
Quail and potato curry.
Do have some of yourself, Paul.
Thank you. It's very kind of you.
Ooh. Oh, it's good, isn't it? Oh.
It's so deep. It's do you know what it is? I keep saying it, but it's the acidity.
Yeah.
It's those tomatoes, that apple.
Yep. There is that, a lovely bit of acidity with it, but they're really round, deep.
And I love the potatoes because they've just sucked up all that flavour. Happy?
Oh, wow.
Were Queen Victoria approved when you finished?
Queen Victoria would have been amused.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Quail and potato curry, created for Victoria, Queen of England and Empress of India. There's no better place to explore Victoria's passion for India than at Osborne House, the royal family's retreat on the Isle of Wight. As Dr. Annie Gray explains, it's here that she chose to showcase the imagined glamour of the Raj.
Queen Victoria never actually went to India. Instead, she had India brought to England in the shape of this room, the Durbar Room, which was constructed to expand the palace and give her entertaining space. But I think if I'd been present at one of those entertainments, I'd have struggled to keep my attention on what was going on the stage because my jaw would be too busy hitting my chest as I ogled all this incredible decoration.
Designed by prominent Indian architects of the time, the room is like a Maharaja's palace, full of elaborate Indian craftsmanship and symbolic motifs. And Victoria's homage to the subcontinent didn't stop here.
In 1887, across came the first of what would prove to be a procession of Indian servants. And they came across to be personal attendants to the Queen. The Indian servants were seen as exotic imports. They were beautiful, resplendent, standing beside the Queen. But the household did not exactly welcome them. In the main, most of them were accepted, but one man in particular grew to be one of the Queen's most hated servants. He was called Abdul Karim, also known as the Munshi, and in the later years of the Queen's life, he was one of her closest confidants and friends. She elevated him from the position of a mere personal attendant and made him into her close personal secretary. One of her attendants did suggest that the reason she liked him so much was because he annoyed the rest of the household so much, and as the Queen grew older, she needed to inject a bit of excitement in her life. He may well have been right.
The Indian cooks weren't much liked either. They introduced Victoria to authentic Indian cuisine, and as a result, the kitchens at Osborne had to accommodate their ways of working.
We know from the diaries and memoirs of Gabrielle Shumee, who was one of the apprentices in the kitchen at the time, that the Indian cook or cooks had their own ingredients sent to them, live animals, presumably to be butchered by them in the way they deemed fit, and also whole spices. Shumee was very sniffy about this habit of grinding their own spices from fresh. He said that the royal kitchens were very well provided for with the best quality curry powder, so why on earth would these cooks from India need to grind their own? But grind them they did, and it appears that the food they produced met with Queen Victoria's satisfaction, and the words Indian dish appeared regularly on her menus in the 1880s and 1890s.
Her favourite curries were usually chicken or fish, and her passion for this cuisine fired up the taste buds of the nation.
But it's fair to say that Queen Victoria was one of the people to elevate curry, or at least Indian food, from being a mere leftover dish beloved of the middle classes to something that truly was fit for a queen.
Victoria is said to have eaten dishes cooked by her Indian chef most Sundays and Tuesdays. The same can't be said for the rest of the household.
Although Osborne House was designed primarily as a private residence, certain hierarchies still had to be maintained, and that meant that everybody ate separately. This was the Queen's dining room. The Queen would have a menu comprising of all of the best kind of dishes, and sometimes that all-important Indian dish, the authentic curry, which she liked to eat. The household would have a very, very similar menu, but they never had that curry. That was reserved for the Queen and her nearest and dearest only. So one can imagine perhaps the lower servants from time to time looking at the menus for those above them and thinking, oh, I just wish I could have a little bit of that rather fancy Indian chicken dish.
The relationship between royalty and Indian food continues today. An Indian chef, Atul Kochhar, is one of the latest chefs to work with the royal family.
Atul is one of Britain's top Indian chefs. He's worked closely with Prince Charles and has also been called upon by the Queen when she entertained guests from the subcontinent.
Okay, guys, get on with it. Thank you.
When the President of India was the guest of Her Majesty, Atul was invited to assist the chefs at Buckingham Palace as they prepared the menu for the state visit. Sea bass was one of the dishes.
Pan-fried sea bass, mussels, a great coconut sauce called moili, and a masala mash. When President of India was visiting the United Kingdom, I was invited to cook this dish. I felt very honored, and this recipe has become a kind of recipe close to my heart, which I absolutely adore, and I cook it time and time again. So let's make the sauce first. So we start with mustard seeds, and they crackle immediately. Some sliced garlic, and I also like to add a little bit of ginger and some shallots. I got congratulated for my recipe, but I was very, very happy. I need green chili, and the way I like to use my chili is I remove the seeds because they have all the heat.
With his inside knowledge of the royal taste buds, Atul could get his spicing spot on, prioritizing flavor rather than heat.
When I have such a high-profile function to cater for, and especially cooking in England, not everyone is fond of green chilies or red chilies. So I took the heat out, and that way I have the flavor, but not the heat. Turmeric, coconut milk, and that goes in. And I'll add a pinch of salt in this. Now, believe it or not, my sauce is ready. So masala mash, it's really easy. Same ingredients, but different result. So I've just added mustard seeds to the pan, followed by a little bit of garlic. Add a few curry leaves, some chopped ginger, and I got mashed potatoes, which go in. I know the royal family is not keen on garlic, so whenever I'm cooking for them, the garlic is off the recipe. It's very simple. That's how you handle it. I also like to add a dash of red chili and a small pinch of turmeric, some butter. It's a really simple recipe. Okay, must taste it before I set it aside. Beautiful, and that's looking really good. Because that's done. And we can go and pan fry our fish. I'm pressing the fish down so that it remains flat and nice. And pan frying fish, what you want to achieve out of it is, A, of course you want to cook it, but also you want to achieve the skin to be absolutely crisp and nice. So for that, what we do as a chef, I would watch that how the meat is getting cooked, the protein of the fish. It starts becoming opaque and starts traveling towards the center of the fish. When it's right in the middle, that's the time I know the skin is absolutely crisp. I'll flip it over and follow the recipe beyond that. Just to double check, I will lift it slightly and see. Okay, that's actually beautiful. From here, I would need to add the mussels quickly in the pan. 4 or 5 mussels would do. A blob of butter.
It's a complex dish, and takes a bit of skilled organisation to serve on a grand scale.
When we do this for a special banquet where you're feeding 300 people, so obviously it's a conveyor belt, okay? And there are large number of chefs helping you. You're not doing it alone. I think the fish is beautifully cooked. All I'm going to do is just take the fish away and leave the mussels in the pan for another few seconds. And we are ready to plate. That goes right in the center. Few mussels, you can put them aside. So the potato mash also goes, a mussel can rest on it. Pan-fried sea bass, mussels, a masala mash, and a beautiful coconut moili sauce. It's as simple as that. Now, I was incredibly happy the way this dish went, the way people liked it. I got massive feedback from the guests and the royalty as well.
Atul went down really well. He's hot stuff, isn't he?
He is. Atul is the spice master. He really is.
Right, what are you cooking?
Prince Harry loves fiery goat curry. So we're going to cook a dish.
Is this the one he learned from the Gurkhas?
Absolutely, and we're going to cook a dish inspired by that. So here we have some onions cooking down. And in Nepalese cookery, they love to really darken the onions, and it's fantastic. And what happens, you get real deep flavour. So you see here, Michael, the reason they're going dark, see all that? That is pure flavour. That's the sugars that come out of the onion. They caramelise, and that's how the onions get nice and dark.
No, apparently Prince Harry had this stuff when he was serving in Afghanistan.
Right.
He was a forward air controller, and the Gurkhas apparently provided cover, you know, guarded him while he was doing it during the day, and at night they'd cook up fiery goat curry.
Fascinating. Right, so here we have garlic, chilli, and ginger. Oh, the smell is delicious. Lovely, isn't it? Okay. So we get that nice and blitzed up, so it's lovely and fine. Yeah. And straight away we're going to get that cooked down. I do, I love it.
You're a blitzer.
I'm a blitzer. Right, get that.
That's really brown, those onions, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, and
you call them caramelised.
Flavour, yeah. You might say burnt, we say caramelised. Okay, so now we're cooking. Right, over here, this is really interesting and really kind of important to this dish, is when we dry fry the spices. Now, just quickly as well, can you see where the juices came out of the garlic and the ginger? See how now it's just kind of lifted that off, takes it even darker. So again, great base. I mean, have a smell of that, Michael.
But you can't get smells on television.
I know. Here we've got an array of amazing spices that have been previously dry fried. Yeah. And the reason for that is spices contain oil. Yeah. So they dance, they come alive, and then you just let them cool and then blitz them again. There's that blitzing again. We've got some asafoetida, we've got some beautiful clove.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's got like a nice kind of almost like an onion sort of taste to it. That's the bright yellow. Clove, which is really interesting in this dish. Fenugreek. So they have been dry fried, left to cool, and then blitzed like that. Have a smell. Straight in. So again, the flavours starting to work in this dish are amazing. Star anise, wonderful kind of aniseed.
I mean, it looks lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gorgeous, but it's really good.
Like aniseed balls?
Absolutely. Bay leaf, just give them a little nick to let those oils come out.
Yeah, and cinnamon.
Snap that. And you can already see, just very quickly, we've got one beautiful base starting to come together. Absolutely wonderful. Here we go with those magic tomatoes, full of acidity, nice sweetness. They go straight in. So important in this type of cooking. Absolutely delicious. Get those all in there. Now, onto our goat.
I have to tell you.
Yeah?
I'm not mad on goat.
You're not?
Yeah, I worked a lot in Africa.
Yeah.
And I ate a lot of goat.
This is the shoulder. Okay, we're going to add that straight in. We've just browned it off previously, and that's just, again, to get that lovely flavour. Yeah. So we add that in.
Because in India, I think, they talk about mutton and mutton curry and things, but quite often it's not lamb, it's actually goat.
It's goat, yeah, a really mature goat. The reason why you wouldn't want to use like a really young goat like the kid in a recipe like this is because you've got so many flavours, as you do with this type of cooking. Yeah. You've got all of these spices and you would just lose it. So you need something that's going to hold its own.
Yeah, and a kid would be too delicate.
Absolutely. In with the water. like that. Don't, with any recipes like this, don't drown it in the water, just enough to cover. You can add more, but don't dilute that flavour.
Could you do this with lamb as well?
Could do this with lamb, could do this with beef. And when you're cooking like this, use those real working cuts, shoulder, stuff like that, legs, beautiful working cuts.
Why do you call them working cuts?
Because it's the part of the animal that works.
Oh, the animal's
most.
muscle.
Yeah, you know, normally along the back are the tender cuts. The legs, the shoulders, they're the working cuts. So they're the things that need cooking longer.
Okay.
Right. So that's everything in the pan. We're just going to put the lid on and get that in the oven.
Fiery goat curry.
Yes.
Now, are they just showing off, or is it really going to be hot? Is it going to be a vindaloo?
It's not going to be a vindaloo because you've got lovely fragrant spices in there, but it's going to have a nice bit of a kick with a lovely chilli powder there. Right, onto the side dishes. For me, probably one of my most favourite salads, and it's the kachumba. You've got this lovely, rich kind of curry, and you want something to really clean the palate. So you've got lovely, clean cucumber, tomatoes, red onions, some nice green chilli, some garam masala. We're going to finish that with a little bit of lime and some fresh coriander. So you can imagine rich, hot, and nice temperature contrast as well. It's as easy as this. Make sure everything's quite thinly sliced, because you don't want to be sort of big chunks of red onion. Okay? Just a light seasoning, all right? Not too much.
That's the garam masala.
That's the garam masala.
Why are you putting that in there?
It's just a lovely spice garam masala. Smell it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, and it's
that
a
will
clean
also be
taste.
dry for really, really
taste, isn't it?
clean taste, yeah. Okay, some lime juice. Delicious. Okay. Some lovely coriander. And then just, you know, you can get your fingers in there. For you, Michael, I'll be very polite. And just a nice, gentle stir. Okay?
Yep. And what's that other dish you've got in front of your kachumba?
So, the traditional cucumber raita, well, this is yoghurt, mint and apple. And the apple's, because you've got the cucumber in the kachumba, the apple in there is delicious.
Oh, that's an
lovely
interesting
acidity.
variety
really,
on the usual
really nice.
raita, isn't it?
Right, shall we serve up?
I think we should.
Yeah, let's do it. And over here is our delicious goat curry. Look at that. The smell, that's the bit, lifting the lid off, putting that in the middle of the table.
Yeah.
That is magnificent. And do you know what we'll do? We'll just finish that with some more fresh coriander. Okay? Yeah. And we're just going to now stir that in.
Wonderful, rich, dark brown.
Look at it. It's honestly, it's incredible. Okay, now we're just going to serve up.
Yeah, come on. Oh, my word, that looks good, doesn't it?
It's delicious, isn't it? Absolutely delicious. Do you know what? There is an art as well to cooking meat like this as well. It shouldn't be like falling apart, that it's just kind of cooked within an inch of its life. It should still have texture.
And still be chunky.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Would you like some kachumba?
Yes, yes, please.
I just like saying it.
Yeah, I know you do, I know you do.
Right, bit of kachumba for you, Michael.
Yep.
Okay, nice bit of that lovely apple and mint raita.
Yep.
And there we have my inspired version of the fiery goat curry.
This is the first time I've had goat by choice.
By choice. Dig in.
Here we go.
Get stuck in.
Oh, I say.
That's good.
It's so rich, isn't it?
It's beautiful.
A nice different take on the raita with the apple. And kachumba bazooka.
Yeah, like that.
Do you want something? No, you
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Come on, come on.
It's, I think, like you say, it's the richness, and then you've got these things here giving you the acidity and cutting through it all. It's such a great dish. I have to say, Prince Harry has got good taste.
Fiery goat curry is just one of a huge range of curries available to British people, as well as princes.
The British passion for curry has grown and grown since the days of Queen Victoria. So much so that Anglo-Indian cuisine is now considered to produce some of the best curries in the world.
Brick Lane in London's East End is a hotspot for British curry and home to a thriving Bangladeshi community, the driving force behind modern Anglo-Indian cuisine.
This is the onion stock. This is just a little garam masala.
When leading restaurateur Inam Ali arrived here from Bangladesh in 1974, the restaurants may have been called Indian, but the food wasn't quite what Inam was used to back home.
It was really different then. I was shocked to see it's called Indian restaurant, Indian curry house. But they used to sell roast chicken, peas, and the whole menu. 70% was all English dish.
In the 70s, the chefs started to adapt authentic recipes to suit British tastes, even inventing dishes.
Then you're putting the tandoori masala sauce, the tikka masala sauce.
They included the famous chicken tikka masala that is creamy rather than spicy, perfect for the British palate.
Chicken tikka is actually from Pakistan and Bangladesh and India. It was cooked in clay oven, and then when chicken tikka was served, people find it's too spicy, too hot, and then somebody said put some tomato puree, put some cream, put something sweet. It's just amazing success story in Britain. So I regarded it, this is a British curry, and it's still #1 dish in the country.
This new wave of Indian curry houses started to serve their cuisine in a more recognizable way. The poppadom replaced bread and butter.
In this country, when you go to any restaurant, they serve you bread and butter. So they come up with the idea of papadum. Normally, papadum back home is same as you maybe eat here, packet of crisp. The way of serving, way of thinking is totally different than what I had actually back home. So it was really shocking me.
And Bombay aloo, a potato curry dish, replaced the chip.
Bombay aloo, I believe, is also idea come from when people keep on eating chips and the chips, and they're also maybe asking for same question again. Can't you find something spicy? Can't you find something different? Bombay aloo was born and now one of the fastest selling in this country. If you go to India, ask for Bombay aloo, they might not understand what is Bombay aloo.
And the onion ring became the onion bhaji.
Early 70s, early 60s, when they're making onion ring, they come up with the idea of the similarity of pakora. So what they do, they chop the onion and making onion ring, and they chop again and make this together and making a big cricket ball and put all the spices and everything and making onion bhaji. The people who work in the curry industry in the first generation, because of them we are here, and because of their idea, today we selling onion bhaji to India, papadum, they start selling in India. What a fascinating story. Even though I don't know who invented this, I'd like to salute them. Because of them, to the whole world is enjoying British curry.
By the late 1980s, the first fine dining curry restaurants began to appear in the UK. In 1989, Inam opened Le Rage, one of the first to achieve Michelin star status.
When I see my name listed on the Michelin Guide, I was very honored and privileged. And when I realized that the first generation, what they've done, still I can't run this restaurant without their contribution. So I just thought I should stand up and say thank you, to recognize people who contributed enormously.
In tribute to these innovative curry restaurateurs, Inam set up the British Curry Awards, now the Oscars of the curry world, with 430 million viewers worldwide. One of the most coveted awards is for Best Takeaway, and it was recently won by a restaurant in Brighton with no South Asian heritage.
Being received at the British Curry Awards and when not being Indian is fabulous. It feels like a huge celebration of Indian cuisine and Indian dining, and it acknowledges everybody that's in the industry. And Inam Ali has really pushed it forward and put it to the forefront of people's attention as well, which is great.
And Inam has also won recognition from the Queen for his work promoting Anglo-Indian curry cuisine.
I'm very touched by that she honored me for got the MBE for contributing to the British Curry Award. The royal family definitely enjoy the real good curry. Britain has so much to offer, and people don't have to go to India for a curry, they will come here for a curry.
It's official. We're a nation of curry lovers, and it all dates back to Queen Victoria, who inspired her own family as well as her people.
I'm here in the house's magnificent library with Fiona Ross, who's a food historian who writes a lot about the royals. We all know Queen Victoria had this real interest in India in particular, Indian cuisine, Indian culture. What about her successors?
Well, her successors continued that very much so.
Bertie, her son, and then his son, George V. George V, despite being rather a dull monarch, at least food-wise, came to adore Indian food.
And India itself.
And India itself, yes. He shifted position from being the sort of monarch who would always eat the same thing every day for breakfast to becoming somebody who was a real advocate for India, who felt an enormous sense of responsibility for the empire in itself.
I mean, originally, he just hated the idea of leaving Britain, didn't he?
Yes, when he first married Mary, he insisted that they honeymoon in Sandringham, telling her, "I've been abroad and it's not good."
But then he went to India.
But then he went to India in 1905, and he and Mary travelled 9,000 miles, spent 18 weeks there. And he was not only impressed by the magnificence of the landscape, you know, Mandalay, Rangoon, but he also felt a real sense of himself as the first monarch to visit India. He was the first Indian emperor.
He was kind of notoriously unimaginative about food normally, but not when it came to Indian food.
That's right, yes. He moved from being somebody who would punctually eat the same breakfast every morning, every day of the week, to a lover of Bombay duck with curry sauce.
And it was during his reign that the Empire Marketing Board tried to somehow bring all these exotic foods from Empire and Commonwealth into Britain.
Yes, they did. The Empire Marketing Board was established in 1926, and it was headed by the Colonial Secretary, Leo Emery. They had an enormous budget for the time in order to promote empire produce from the colonies and the dominions of the British Empire. It was an enormous publicity campaign for its time. There were over 200 empire marketing posters produced, which had brilliant slogans such as "The jungles of today are the gold mines of tomorrow." Housewives were encouraged to cook for the empire. There was almost a sense of having an ethical responsibility in what you bought and cooked with.
But were they being urged to cook really exotic Indian dishes or Jamaican dishes or something else?
No, the grandly named Women's Patriotic League focused their attentions mostly on the empire pudding, which they started the first Empire Shopping Week in 1922, and they managed to persuade Harrods and Selfridges to give over areas of shop floor to marketing the Empire pudding. And the idea was that women could even buy the pudding in its ready-made in its bowl, so all you would have to do is sort of stir it up, steam it.
But what's fun is they're being invited to have all these wonderful exotic things and squeeze them into a traditional British dish.
Yes, that's right. There's no sort of... They're not transgressing any boundaries there.
Not doing anything too dangerous.
Yes, that's right.
Fair enough, thanks. Look at this, Paul. This is the Empire Christmas pudding, according to the recipe supplied by the King's chef, Mr. Sedar, by their Majesty's gracious consent. And we've got currants from Australia, sultanas from South Africa, it's got candied peel from South Africa, demerara sugar from the West Indies, cinnamon from India, from absolutely all over.
The Empire Christmas pudding, amazing.
This is the recipe book of Mildred Nichols, who was, you know, just a few years earlier than this. She was a kitchen maid at Buckingham Palace, as we know. And one of the most fascinating entries in her recipe book, which we got hold of, is the plum pudding, the Christmas pudding.
Absolutely.
And on one side, this is a fascinating thing about it, on one side it's the royals' plum pudding, and on the other side it's the servants' plum pudding.
And what's the difference?
Well, this is the point. There isn't a difference except quantity. I mean, look how much more, you know, it's a small one for the royals, but the servants has got 40 pounds of beef suet, 40 pounds of flour. It just goes to show, I mean, how many servants were actually working in Buckingham Palace.
40 pounds of beef suet.
As a starter. There we are, Mildred Nichols' plum pudding. So what are your ingredients?
We've got that lovely dried fruit, sultanas, currants, raisins, mixed peel, beef suet, which I love in these old-fashioned steam puddings. All of them, they're absolutely fantastic. Demerara sugar, dark brown sugar, nutmeg. We've got some beautiful cinnamon, breadcrumbs, some rum and some brandy.
I was eyeing that.
Absolutely delicious. And if you're just looking there, what I love is the suet. That's what really, for me, kind of just brings it all together. That fat
ties it
down.
in. Yep.
Absolutely. Very simple. pudding basin, we've just lined it with some butter. So we're just simply going to spoon this mix into here, Michael. And you can see it's quite a firm mix. So the important thing is, as you're doing it, push down, because we don't want to create any air pockets.
Yeah.
So
it's really quite splodgy.
It is, yeah. So don't just whack it all in there and like from the top. Do it stage by stage. So we've got all that mix in there like that.
Well done.
Okay?
Don't waste
I'm just
any.
going to have to get you to give me a little hand, because we're going to put the tin foil on top.
Mildred now.
And then we'll put the string round. So again, like a traditional steam pudding. So just all the way to the outside. So it all cooks nice and evenly. Okay.
And really smoothing it off.
Really smoothing it off.
Do you want me to hold?
Now, you see my tin foil, I've lined that with butter as well, so everything's like kind of got that lovely butter line, so it's not going to stick.
Yeah.
Simply on top like that, go push it on, so the butter then sticks to the pudding mix, okay? And then just, this bit is really important. You don't want to allow any moisture kind of to get in, or water to get in there. Okay.
Shall I hold it up?
Yeah, just if you can just hold it in place from the bottom.
Right.
Like that, and then I'm gonna, that's it, that's fantastic.
If I put my finger
That's
on
it,
that.
put your finger on there,
Put my finger
okay?
on there.
This is teamwork.
It is. Oh, that's bubbling away.
So in here, we've got a nice deep pan, lots of steam, and I've just got a saucer turned upside down, just to kind of like elevate it so the heat's going all the way around. And then just really carefully drop your pudding in there, sit it on top of the saucer, just like that.
And it's about up to what level?
Basically, it's about a quarter full.
Yeah.
Because we don't want it to move, we just want steam.
Yeah.
Lid back on. The steam is trapped in there now, and that is just going to steam cook for 8 hours. 8 hours.
It's a long job.
Tip, just keep an eye on the water, because it will boil dry even though the lid's on there. And that's it.
Yeah. It was a pretty industrial scale in
Yeah.
the palace, wasn't it? I think they make as many as 150 of these things in the palace.
Yeah,
that's quite a production line, isn't it?
Hats off, yeah, and you remember, that's all by hand.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, no machines or mixers, everything by hand. It's incredible. Yeah. And that's going to cook for 8 hours.
I'm not going to wait 8 hours.
No, you haven't got to, because
No.
lucky for you, I've been slaving away.
Yep, yep. And here it is.
Here it is.
Go on, cut it, Paul. Cut it.
You are excited. Do you like pudding?
I do
like
actually,
this?
yeah.
Right, we'll take a nice wedge.
Yep.
Yeah.
You do that so well.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at the steam.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Suety pudding.
Now,
Stuffed with fruit.
stuffed with fruit.
What are you
And do
gonna
you know
put
what?
on
Brandy butter.
Well, did I need
Brandy
us?
butter.
Did I need us?
Yeah. The low-calorie version.
Are you doing that with a hot spoon?
Hot spoon, yeah. Just so it comes off my spooning, just goes up nicely like that. And
Oh, tricks of the trade. Look at the presentation. I'm not going to look at the presentation for long.
that.
I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to eat it. Here we go. You going to have one?
Yeah, I am.
Not a real wedge of brandy butter. Oh, come on, you. Come on, you devil.
Get in there. Get in there.
All the taste buds standing to attention, they are.
How good is that?
Oh, it is good.
It is, isn't it?
There's something to be said for the servants' hall, you know. If they've got one monstrous Christmas puddings, and they can have more and more of this. Oh, yeah. Mildred, happy Christmas.
Mildred, I love you.
Hello, I'm Michael Burke. Welcome to a brand new series of royal recipes. This time, we're at Westonbirt House, formerly a grand country house, now a boarding school, which has played host to royal visitors for over 100 years. In this series, we're delving even further back in time to reveal over 600 years of royal food heritage. You play Anne Boleyn, and I will play Henry VIII. And we've been busy unlocking the secrets of Britain's great food archives, discovering rare and unseen recipes that have been royal favourites through the ages. From the earliest royal cookbook in 1390...
It's so precious, so special that I'm not allowed to touch it.
...to Tudor treats from the court of Henry VIII.
I can't wait for this. 1, 2, 3.
We'll be exploring the great culinary traditions enjoyed by the royal family, from the grand to the groundbreaking, as well as the surprisingly simple.
I did think that was going to be a disaster.
As we hear from a host of royal chefs.
Prince Philip would walk past or pop his head in and say, "What's for dinner? What are we having?" Oh yeah, it's not just a normal kitchen.
And meet the people who provide for the royal table.
It's OK for the Queen, it's OK for everyone.
Welcome to Royal Recipes. In today's programme, we're exploring royal extravagance. And in the past, they didn't do things by halves. Some of the culinary extravaganzas produced by royal chefs down the centuries were legendary. Today on Royal Recipes, we discover the scale of one royal appetite. This is a banquet with more than 120 different dishes. Chef Anna Haar is on a secret mission.
I'm afraid at this point I'm going to have to put a blindfold on you.
And we'll hear about the lengths a would-be suitor went to win the hand of a queen.
He spent so much money that he bankrupted himself for the rest of his life. I'm here in the Royal Recipes kitchen with Michelin-starred chef Paul Ainsworth. What's cooking?
Mock turtle soup.
Mock turtle soup?
Yes.
As opposed to real turtle
Yes,
soup.
as opposed to there's no turtles round here.
No turtles have been harmed in the production of this programme.
No.
OK, now this is as served at a dinner, Christmas dinner for Queen Victoria and the royal family in 1895 at Osborne House, her favourite palace on the Isle of Wight. First course, mock turtle soup. What do you do?
I've been so excited about sharing you this recipe because I love it so much. In here, I've just taken some of this beautiful consommé.
How long does it take to get that meat there into that consommé there?
Right. That meat will go into a pan with those vegetables that you can see around the platter. That will come up to a simmer and then actually cook for 7 hours. OK, really slowly. And then all of that lovely gelatinous quality that's in the trotters and especially the shin of beef will be going into the stock. We then sieve that off, reduce it right down, and then we get to the stage where we then make consommé. So you'd bring the stock up to the boil, whisk in some egg whites, very gently let the egg whites rise to the top, and as the egg whites rising to the top, it's dragging all the impurities with it. Underneath will be crystal clear stock. It's so intense in flavour. We're just going to put into this pan a little bit of that consommé, some peeled and finely chopped celery, peeled and finely chopped carrot, and peeled and finely chopped swede.
Right.
Now, we want to get the flavour happening straight away, so we're just going to crush some sea salt just in there and leave it like so. Now we're going to move over to where the mock turtle come from. So basically, this recipe was used with green turtles, but they were seen as a status symbol, very expensive. So the mock came in for the people that couldn't afford the green turtles. They would use things like beef shin, pig's trotters, tongue, because it had the same gelatinous, rich qualities that you got from jellied from the green turtle.
The turtle would have had. The original turtle soup was a byproduct of the slave trade. The sailors in the West Indies would catch the turtles, they'd bring them back home, and the aristocracy saw this, rather liked it. It became very fashionable, very elegant, particularly at big banquets. In fact, real tradition at the Lord Mayor's banquet, turtle soup. But because they loved them so much, they caught them. 15,000 a year were coming to Britain, but they were hunted to extinction. So they were either just too expensive or not available at all, so people had to try and find something that tasted like turtle to go in the soup. Hence, mock turtle. So what are you going to do now?
So next, nothing gets wasted. We've then shredded the meat off of the trotter, the tongue we've diced, and the beef shin there. We've got. Now, leave those out picked at room temperature, OK? So they're going to go over there, ready for when we plate up. Next, which was quite traditional with this recipe, was what they called a forced meat ball. It's like a dumpling.
Forced meat stuffing, isn't it?
Absolutely. So if you could add into that bowl for me, we've got some finely chopped smoked bacon, breadcrumbs, and suet. There's a spoon, OK? All right?
Yeah, will do.
Good. I'm going to go behind you and grab
Do you remember
this bowl?
In Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, isn't it?
Yes.
There was a mock turtle.
Yes, there was.
And the mock turtle had a calf's head. It was a turtle's body with a calf's head. Presumably because they made this soup from calf's head as well?
So traditionally, that there would be a calf's head.
Yeah. OK.
Gonna add in 1 egg, so carry on mixing, please, Michael.
OK.
Seasoning.
Yeah, always
okay?
seasoning.
Always seasoning. Right, I'm just gonna get our pan on because once we've made these dumplings, we're gonna fry them off. Right, last, but not least, some beautiful fresh chopped parsley.
Right.
And a good twist of cracked black pepper. Now,
and this is your force meat dumpling.
Okay.
Shall I do a bit of that?
Go on, have a go.
It's just a matter of...
On the tray.
Just a matter of rolling it, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
All this chefing business is simple, isn't it?
It's easy. Excellent. Our vegetables are nice and ready to go. So in here, Michael, I've just got a little bit of oil. And basically, the oil will make sure the butter won't burn, and then the butter's giving us that wonderful flavour. Over here, we're going to take our dumplings.
Yep.
Right? And then just into here, and just move them around in the pan like so. A little bit more butter, and then we'll just turn our heat down just a touch.
Royal Christmas dinner, Osborne House. It was Victoria's favourite palace, you know, on the Isle of Wight. That was where she retreated after her husband, Prince Albert, died.
Right.
Went into almost complete seclusion for a very, very long time. Long period of mourning. Wore black for years and years and years. She had all of her children and grandchildren there. These days, the royals have Christmas at Sandringham, don't they? But Victoria was so fond of Osborne on the Isle of Wight. She was there in August, you know, for Cow's Week and all that kind of stuff, and at Christmas as well.
Don't they look wonderful?
They certainly do.
And they're ready.
Wow.
Look at them, they're gorgeous, aren't they?
They certainly are.
Just put those over here. And now we're going to start to plate up.
Yep.
Right, so I'm going to take a little bit of this shredded shin. Some of that beautiful shredded pig's trotter. Lovely tongue going around the outside.
So, taste and texture there,
Taste and texture. Every day. Now, we've got those lovely vegetables going over the top.
Finely diced vegetables.
Yeah, and they're just nice and softened, beautifully seasoned with that stock.
Yeah.
Now we've got our dumplings.
Ah, right. You're draining them a bit.
Just draining them off, OK? And the reason for is that the butter's done its job. See how crispy they are on the outside? We don't want that fat to then go into our lovely consommé that we've made.
OK.
OK? So we're just going to put 3 on top like so. Like that. OK? Now, don't pour the consommé over the top. Go from the side.
OK. This is a real British classic dish, isn't it, Paul? In fact, in the 30s, Heinz even did a tin version of it.
Did they really?
Yeah.
I bet that was delicious.
Oh, no, come on, don't be no. I'm sure it was great, but it wasn't anything like this.
No. I absolutely love this recipe so much.
Can I try it?
Go for it. Go on.
You sure?
Yes.
Nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
The consommé bit is really intense.
Yeah.
And you've got so many different textures and so many different flavours. You can see why it was such a principal part of all those big ceremonial banquets. It's really substantial, isn't it?
It is.
And yet, you know, Christmas dinner, 1895, this was just the first course. After that, they had turbot, lobster, turkey with chipolatas.
Even back then.
Even back then. Asparagus, mince pies, plum pudding, chocolate eclair, and on the side they had baron of beef, boar's head, game pie, brawn, and hot roast beef. My goodness.
It really, blows me away how much they would consume back then. It's, you know, really rich eating and living, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But mock turtle soup, absolutely delicious, and not a single turtle was harmed in making this dish.
A modern, meaty take on a dish originally a staple of 18th century sailors and the Georgian aristocracy.
Georgian royalty certainly had a taste for the finer things of life, and this was reflected in the ingredients used in royal cooking. In the 18th century, truffles were often used to flavour sauces and gravies. These days, many of the truffles we consume come from overseas, but there's a growing trend for UK truffle farming. So precious is the crop
that today's truffle producers insist on complete secrecy.
Chef Anna Haar went to meet truffle hunter Zach Frost and his truffle dog, Stanley.
I'm afraid at this point I'm going to have to put a blindfold on you and lead you the rest of the way. So if you don't mind just slipping this on.
Okay, you're going to have to guide me, though.
Right, okay.
Stand the man, don't trip me up.
This way.
These woods are somewhere in Wiltshire and absolutely bristling with wild truffles.
I think you can now take the mask on. So this is it. Welcome to the truffle woods.
So can we go truffle hunting?
Yeah, why not? Let's find some truffles.
The peak season for English truffles is the autumn, when the damp, cold conditions give them their pungent aroma. But they'd be almost impossible to find without Stanley.
So has Wiltshire always been famous for truffle hunting?
Well, yeah, it has actually. There's been a tradition of truffle hunting in Wiltshire going back a few centuries.
Oh, wow.
And there were once a number of professional truffle hunters in the area, supplied truffles to the gentry in London and the royal family. They were always a luxury product. And then the most famous of these was the Collins family, particularly Eli Collins, who for many years was the premier truffle hunter of the area and held a royal warrant as well. And he was a part of 6 generations of truffle hunters. But then his son Alfred was the last of the line.
Oh.
And that was around the 1930s.
And what brought about the demise of truffle hunting?
There's a number of factors. There's the modern farming methods. A lot of the old woodlands were cleared. And then a big issue also was the 2 world wars, where a lot of young men died, and they were obviously distracted from things like truffle hunting. And then the secrets weren't really passed on to the next generation. It's only recently it's been reawakened, and English truffles are back on the menu.
Wow.
And seemingly back on the royal menu. In 2006, the Duke of Edinburgh planted a 1-acre truffle orchard at Sandringham in the hope that it will one day provide for the royal kitchens.
Is that a truffle scan? Show it to me.
Oh, aren't you a clever boy?
Yeah, good boy. You see here we found a whole nest of about 10
there's loads
truffles.
of them there.
This one's definitely starting to develop a little bit of an aroma.
Want a sniff?
And as you see, there's a whole collection of them here, really. They often grow in big groups.
Wow. Oh, my God. That's huge. There's so much that I love about truffles. I do like the idea that through the year that you get different varieties of truffles, so you can use them in different ways. That it's the finishing touch to make a dish perfect.
It's back to Zach's place to scrub the truffles clean.
Thanks. What inspired you to make the jump into truffle hunting?
Really just kind of fell into it because I started hunting the truffles purely for the love of doing it. I loved hunting them, I loved eating them.
Yeah.
And so chefs started to ask me if they could buy them. So it really became a very natural progression to start a proper business.
Well, from the taste I had of truffle hunting today, I can understand where you kind of get the thrill and the passion of...
It's so exciting, and there's nothing else I'd rather be doing, really. The big trouble now is keeping up with demand.
It's little wonder. For chefs like Anna, truffles can make all the difference to the flavour of a dish. And that's reflected in the price of autumn truffles. 250 grams of these pearls of the earth will cost you around £200 in the shops.
But really the shape and the size and everything is completely irrelevant compared to the aroma. Much better to have an ugly truffle or a tiny truffle or anything that smells amazing, beautiful in the right dishes.
Truffles are such a delicious treat, aren't they,
They
Paul?
are.
They add richness and warmth as well as flavour, don't they?
They do.
Now, are you going to put truffles in the next dish?
I am, and
What
we're
you
going to
do?
do it with roast pheasant.
This is a dish that was served at perhaps the most lavish banquet ever.
Really?
Given by the Prince Regent for the Grand Duke Nicholas in January 1817. Tell you more about it in a minute. How do you start?
Right, whenever you're using truffle, do not slice it too thick, because when it's nice and thin, what happens is it cooks and whatever, and that's where you're going to get most of its flavour. If it's too thick, you don't get that. It's incredible, isn't it?
Hitting you right in the nose.
So what I've got here...
It's also very expensive, so...
Very expensive, yeah.
Might as well get the most out of it.
That's the main reason. So what we've got here are pheasants on the crown. So pheasant can become very dry very quickly. If you're roasting it on the bone, you've got the best possible chance of keeping it lovely and moist. So we're just going to take our bird like so.
Yeah.
Just pull the skin back.
Pull its jacket up.
Pull its jacket up, that's right, OK. Now I'm just going to take some of this truffle. We're going to poke it underneath.
Under the skin, yeah.
Fold that back down.
Yeah.
And that is just packed full of truffle underneath that breast, like so. I'm going to do the same with the other one. Now, over there, I've got a nice, thick, heavy bottom pan, like a proper casserole pan. The best way I feel to cook this is we want to roast it on the outside, of course we do. We want that lovely roast pheasant flavour. But then we want to, for me, poach it, almost like steam it. OK, so we're just going to
keep
season
it moist.
Absolutely. Season it all over. So here as well, Michael, I've just got some cabbage, which I've just softened down in a little bit of butter and some seasoning, which is nice and simple.
It's a really rich winter meal, isn't it?
It is, and this will all come into play later. So we're getting our oil here. We want it nice and hot. So when we add our pheasants into pan, we've got that sizzle straight away, so that it's caramelising straight away.
Whee!
There we go. OK?
Yep.
In like so. All right, now what I've done with the legs and the wings, I've taken them off, I've roasted them, and then with some of the carcass as well, I've basically roasted that off and put it into chicken stock. So then we've turned our chicken stock into pheasant stock.
It's a really major undertaking, this, isn't it? A really big dish. But, and this is the amazing thing, you know I said it was the most lavish banquet ever held, or might have been?
Yes.
Here we are. Here's the menu, look. Look how many dishes there are. Dozens and dozens and dozens of them. And you think that's a lot. It's only half of it. Because there's all that.
God.
There's all those as well.
It's unbelievable.
This is a banquet with more than 120 different dishes. The royal chef at the time who did the banquet was Marie-Antoine Carême. You've heard of Carême,
Yes, I have, yeah.
Very famous royal chef. OK,
So,
now what?
We're just continually roasting over that nice, and we want to get the colour all over. So while that's happening, we're just going to chop some chives.
Yeah. You know, these dishes weren't the only extravagant thing there. They actually had a pastry model of the Royal Pavilion of Brighton in the centre of the table, and they had a kind of model, a mock-up of a Turkish mosque made out of marzipan that was 4 feet high in the centre of the table as well.
4 feet high?
Yeah.
Out of marzipan?
Out of marzipan.
Incredible.
Extravagant or what?
Now look at that.
Wow.
OK, roasted pheasant. Right, next, same pan,
Yeah.
all that lovely flavour.
Yeah.
Let's just add in a little bit of butter.
Yeah.
OK? Pancetta.
Yeah.
OK? Basically, smoked cured bacon.
Yeah.
All right? We want to work quickly here, Michael. OK? So we want that heat
You're
back
moving
up.
fast. You're moving fast.
Right, we've got carrot, onion and celery in like so.
All very finely diced?
All very finely diced. Bay leaf. Just tear it a little bit, let the oils come out. Just one, OK? Bay leaf strong. Some thyme. Gorgeous stuff.
You're motoring now, Paul.
We're motoring now. White wine.
Oh,
a really nice dry white wine.
Yeah.
Like that. Just a glug. Now over here, that wonderful stock that I told you about.
Yep.
OK? The wings and the legs, they've done their job. OK,
Yep.
now we just need that wonderful infused liquor.
Gosh, that looks rich. That's marvellous.
Next, give it a good stir. Now we go back to our wonderful pheasants. Pop those in the pot like so. Now, stand them up as well, Michael.
So that the breast is on top.
Yeah,
the breast meat is on
the
top.
breast meat is on top, and now the lid will go on like that. OK? That's going to go in the oven, if you could pop it in there for me.
Yep.
And do you know what? It's going to be a lot less than you think. 12 to 15 minutes.
Really? Only 12 to 15 minutes?
Because remember, it's a breast. It's not a shin of beef or a shoulder of lamb. It's something so delicate.
Yeah.
But now, for me, that is the best way to cook pheasant.
But just 12 minutes?
Just 12 minutes,
Gosh.
12, 15 minutes.
What sort of temperature?
170 degrees.
All right, so quite a low heat as well.
You OK with that? Do you need a hand?
No,
You
I'm
all
fine.
right?
I'm fine.
OK. And just on the side, Michael, there's another one resting.
OK, thanks. These dishes are amazing. They're so heavy. Want me to pop it on here?
That'd be lovely. Thank you very much. So we're just going to lift off the lid.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Out come our pheasants.
Gosh, they look
just,
good.
And we're just going to let them rest on this platter over here. Right, so in here I've got some cabbage which has been softened down in the butter, like I said earlier, and I'm just now going to add some mashed potato to it. I've just seasoned it, Michael, with some sea salt and some crushed black pepper. So
And you're mixing that all together?
Just going to mix that all together.
You're not serving it separately?
No. Now here in my sauce, I'm just going to add a little touch of cream, not much. Okay, just a little touch of cream like so. One more.
You didn't put much in though, did you?
No, I didn't, no. So I've got a little separate pan here.
Yep.
I'm going to take some of our chives and I'm going to have some of the chives for the sauce. Okay, like so. And we're going to have some of the chives to go through the mashed potato and cabbage. And we're almost there. God, it smells so good. Right, over here, Michael. As I scoop up, I want the bacon and the vegetables. Right.
Okay.
That, ready to go. Okay. Absolutely beautiful. Mashed potato. So we're just going to serve up, Michael, like so.
Put this out of the way. There we go.
Now.
It all looks so good.
Doesn't it? Right.
Now, where are you going to put the sauce? I'm always interested in where you put the sauce. You put it all over the top?
Over the mashed potato, everywhere. Around, like so. Pheasant skin isn't particularly crispy, so don't worry about that. It's all about flavour.
Wow.
Now, the last thing to go over the top of this is more
a bit more truffle.
Beautiful truffle. Ready?
Oh, it does look good, doesn't it?
Roast pheasant with truffles.
Roast pheasant with truffles, or as Marie-Antoine Carême described it, les faisans truffés à la Périgueux. Oh, there we go. And some truffle.
Yeah, absolutely. And that pheasant should be just beautifully moist.
Oh, yeah. It is moist. Wonderful texture, wonderful taste. And the truffles really intensifying everything. You know, 120 dishes, but this must have been the highlight.
A luxurious dish from an extravagant banquet thrown by an indulgent prince. A king who knew a thing or two about the high life was Henry VIII. And 500 years ago, one of his royal palaces was the scene of some very lavish spending. Leeds Castle in Kent was transformed by Henry into a magnificent residence for his first wife, Catherine. Dr. Polly Russell went along to find out more.
Henry wanted his queen, Catherine of Aragon, to feel really at home here, and he spent a small fortune and a number of years between 1517 and 1523 renovating Leeds Castle to bring it bang up to date.
Historian Annie Kemkaren-Smith takes up the story.
Henry VIII spent a lot of money here to improve the castle and actually turn it into a pleasure palace more than a defensible castle. From 1517 through to 1523, we know that the steward here, Henry Guildford, was given between £200 and £300 every year to improve the castle and make it into a palace.
That's somewhere in the region of £100,000 a year in today's money.
He wanted it to be hung with luxurious tapestries. He wanted there to be feasting and partying here.
There are no records to tell us the detail of all of Henry and Catherine's stays at Leeds Castle, but one visit is very well documented.
We know that there was one particular date where an extraordinary feast took place. Can you tell me about that?
In 1520, Henry and Catherine and their retinue of over 5,000 people came here to Leeds Castle and spent one night.
So travelling with 5,000 people, I mean, that is completely extraordinary. I mean, was this typical of his extravagance? What do we know about, you know, him and his sort of relationship to wealth?
I think it is typical. He was used to extravagance. He was all about display and pomp and ceremony. So for him, travelling with over 5,000 people was just par for the course.
The logistics involved in, you know, all those people, where are they going to sleep? How do you feed them? Do we have any documents which tell us what was actually eaten, what was actually prepared here that amazing night?
Well, we know that the steward here, Henry Guilford, he did have warning of them coming for their one night of 5,000 people for a big dinner. And he got given just over £66 to prepare for it, which was a large amount of money.
A well-paid labourer at that time would have earned about £10 in a year. So it's effectively the year's wages of 6 full-time workers for one night of partying.
For one night of partying.
Oh, that's not bad.
You can only imagine what fun and feasting took place here.
Fortunately for us, there's a shopping list that gives us an idea of what was on the menu.
There's this ledger from the time which gives the household accounts. Just the section on fish tells us that a certain John of Antwerp was paid for supplying an enormous quantity of fish. I mean, for example, he provides 9,100 plaice. I mean, imagine just the sight of 9,100 plaice. Extraordinary. And then down here it actually suggests 3 porpoises. I mean, that also is extraordinary. We obviously don't eat porpoise now, and nor would most people have eaten porpoise. That was really the food of kings.
Deer from the Leeds Castle estates were definitely killed and provided for this one night. We also know that the dairy went into overdrive and provided lots of goods for people to eat during their stay here.
That's really interesting. What documents like this tell us is how extraordinary and opulent and excessive this event was and this feasting was.
But that was only the warm-up to the main event. The gathering was a stop-off en route to a rendezvous near Calais with the French King Francis I, in a meeting which has come to be known as the Field of the Cloth of Gold.
This is the 5,000 descending upon Calais. That this meeting is called the Field of the Cloth of Gold is evidence that it must have been extraordinary as a spectacle of all the gold cloth, the gilt. I mean, these 2 Renaissance princes were determined to establish who was the most powerful, handsome.
The whole meeting, I think, was about outdoing one another in the friendliest of ways. So instead of going to war with each other, they've decided to have this great big event where they meet, they joust with each other, they even wrestle with each other at some point. And Francis actually overthrows Henry, which I'm sure didn't go down that well. But the whole thing on both kings' parts was to outshine the other, and Henry did his part by building massive tents made out of cloth of gold that shimmered in the sunlight and had massive feasting and dancing and banqueting and jousting.
It's the ultimate lads' night out, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
The 29-year-old Henry's extraordinary lads' night out had lasting repercussions for his reign.
We know that when he went out to France to meet Francis I for the Field of the Cloth of Gold meeting, the money that he spent on everything out there pretty much bankrupted England.
When it came to extravagance, Henry VIII was in a league of his own. Wine, food, entertainment, that man could throw a party. I just wish that I'd been there.
Ah, started without me. What are you doing?
I've got some beautiful caramelised lamb's liver.
That's
some
terrific.
Gorgeous cabbage. Look how beautiful, deep and green that is. Cooked in butter, some salt, some pepper. I'm just going to chop up this beautiful lamb's liver and fold it through the cabbage.
Where's my fork?
And then over on the plate there, I've got some stunning, beautifully cooked, fluffy rice.
Oh, it looks nice.
Absolutely. It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely
Where's my
delicious.
fork?
No, it's not for you.
What?
This is for the corgis.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Is this what
This is what the
royal
corgis
corgis
royal
get?
corgis eat, yeah. Look at that.
God, the royals certainly have the best of everything, and that goes for the corgis, does it?
They do. This isn't, So keep your hands off. And then just on top, I'm just going to shave some beautiful truffle.
You know, she's had corgis all her life. More than 80 years, you know.
Right.
The first one, her father, King George VI, brought Dookie, his name was, in 1933, and she's had 30 corgis since then. The latest one is called Whisper.
Whisper?
Yeah, yeah,
Right, okay.
yeah. It used to be owned by the groundsman at Sandringham. up in Norfolk. He died, unfortunately, and she's adopted Whisper. She loves horses as well. Had a pony when she was 4.
Right, OK.
And, of course, famously has all those racehorses. 2,000 winners she had.
2,000 winners?
Yeah, yeah. I wonder what she feeds them.
Yes,
The very best oats?
Indeed, yeah.
With a sauce vinaigrette?
Maybe.
Or a raspberry coulis, do you think?
Sliced truffle.
She is a dedicated fan of horse racing, and the horsiest event of the year is Royal Ascot, one of the most high-profile events in the social calendar. We know what the Queen's animals eat. Well, what about royal guests at Ascot?
Someone who's in the know is Michelin-starred chef Michael Keynes. In 2015, he cooked for 180 people at the royal enclosure at Ascot.
Today I'm making a warm salad of lobster with a curry mayonnaise and a vinaigrette of mango and cardamom. So to start with, we're going to make the vinaigrette. I'm using green cardamom, which is great, but just to break up the shells, we're going to put them in a pestle and mortar so that we get the flavour of the seeds coming out. So I chose this recipe for Royal Ascot because it really does champions the best of British, using lobster as a beautiful product, but also a little bit of nod to the Commonwealth, using the spices from India as an inspiration for this dish. We're going to add the spice to this stock syrup, which is equal amounts of sugar and water brought up to the boil, and we're just going to let that cook out just to extract all of that wonderful flavour.
Michael then adds the juice of a lime and its zest. This will make a gastrique, a sweet and sour sauce.
The day at Ascot's incredible. Really, it's a week of celebration. So we were cooking for 180 covers every day in the top restaurant. And of course, when the Queen arrived, we also had to send food down for her party as well. And obviously, the sense of royalty and the royal occasion is something which is not lost on you when you're cooking.
While the sauce reduces, Michael makes a start on the salad. He's using raté potatoes, a small variety that's packed with flavour.
We're going to cook them simply using some garlic and lots of thyme and bay leaves, and then just water just to cover.
As the potatoes cook, Michael prepares the mango for the salad.
You know, there's always pressure in the kitchen, but in particular, Royal Ascot, 180 covers, this particular dish, wanting to execute it perfectly every time with so much pressure, but at the same time, so enjoyable. So that's the mango ready, and now we're ready for potatoes. These are cooked. So we're going to strain them off using a colander, and once they're cooled down, we'll peel them and dice them.
To prevent the reduced gastrique from crystallising, Michael adds glucose. It's then sieved and combined with the mango puree to make the vinaigrette.
Lid on. Let's get that blending. Now gradually add the oil. A little bit of seasoning, salt and pepper. And there we have our mango vinaigrette. And that's ready.
After steaming for 8 minutes, the lobster is ready.
We must have cracked about 500 lobsters for the week, so massive job. All the lobsters came from Brixham, Devon, so all using British produce. I've got some I've prepared already for the actual presentation, so I'm just going to use this lobster to dice. Lobster meat is lovely and sweet and to go extremely well with the vinaigrette and, of course, the curry mayonnaise, which I'll be making next. For that, I'm going to be using vegetable oil, and we're going to heat that with a Madras curry powder.
The curry sauce is added to the mix of mayonnaise and Greek yoghurt.
You can add as little or as much as you like. But the main thing to remember is not to overpower those delicate flavours of the lobster. And then we're going to add a squeeze of lime juice and an additional pinch of cardamom spice. OK, so now we're ready for the potato salad. So you can imagine being at this restaurant right at the top of the main grandstand, overlooking the race course with thousands of people out enjoying the racing, and of course a procession of the royal horses coming with the Queen on the carriage. But it was such an amazing occasion.
The salad's different elements are now ready to be brought together.
So we're going to start off with the mango, and then our potato, and finally the lobster. To this, we're going to add our finely chopped mint, and now we're going to mix that with our curry mayonnaise that we made.
All that remains is to warm the lobster through.
So we're going to heat that through the oven for about 2-3 minutes at 180 degrees. So while that's in the oven heating up, we're going to start to dress our dish.
And finally, it's time to add those all-important and elegant finishing touches.
And now for a little bit of caviar. Obviously, for something like Royal Ascot, we're using all of the finest ingredients. So there we have it, warm salad of lobster with curried mayonnaise and a vinaigrette of mango and cardamom. A wonderful dish, and what a great day to remember.
Every royal banquet, Paul, needs a showstopper. It's a big ask, but you're not going to fall at this hurdle, are you? Have you got a showstopper?
I'll never let you down, Michael. Yes, I have. A marchpan rose.
Marchpan rose? What's
Yes.
marchpan?
A very, very early version of marzipan. What they would do is they would bake it so it goes actually quite hard, almost like a biscuit. And that's what we're going to do right now.
And this marchpan rose was a centrepiece of one of the most extraordinary royal banquets given for Elizabeth I in 1575. Okay. So let's get on with it.
Yes.
What do you do first?
Ice and sugar into this bowl. Ground almonds goes in, like so. And then if you could just drizzle in some of this rose water for me.
Rose water?
Yeah.
OK.
OK.
It's infused and distilled,
Infused and distilled, that's it. You can almost smell it. It's almost like a perfume, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
OK, add it in.
OK, slowly?
Slowly, that's it. And I'm just going to mix until I basically form a dough.
This banquet held in Elizabeth's honour was the most sumptuous, expensive affair, particularly with how much sugar was used. And remember, in the 16th century, sugar was incredibly expensive. This would have been one of 300 sweet dishes at the banquet. 300? Including sugar sculptures and everything. For loads and loads of people, because Elizabeth was up at visiting Kenilworth with her whole entourage, and they went up there for 3 whole weeks. And this was the banquet at the end of it.
Right, that's
it's a kind of
go.
snowball, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? So we're just going to get that bowl out of our way.
Yep. What next?
And now we're going to move on to rolling it between 2 sheets.
This
now,
is
like
fairly simple so far. This is not stretching you too much.
In fact, the whole recipe, to be fair, is actually very, very simple. Now, just push it down like that. Then we're going to take a rolling pin and just roll it. And what we want to do, Michael, is we want to keep a circle. And with like with marzipan now, we kind of will leave it sort of soft and use it as kind of cake decorating, and you know, some of the things you can make out of marzipan are incredible.
I think much of that must have happened at this banquet because there's a really good story behind it. Because she was up at Kenilworth with her whole entourage as guests of Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester.
Right.
Who, of course, everybody thought was her lover at the time. And he rather hoped he was going to be able to marry her. So she was there for 3 weeks, whole entourage. He laid on banquets, he laid on everything.
Right.
Because he thought he was going to marry the Queen of England. And he spent so much money on it that he almost bankrupted himself for the rest of his life, for those 3 weeks, and particularly this particular banquet, for what it cost him.
That's incredible.
It is, isn't it?
I'll put that. That will then go into the fridge just to set up.
Yeah.
Take that top piece of parchment paper off into the oven, 150, for about 20 minutes. OK? So bake like a biscuit.
OK.
So you get this. OK?
Oh, yeah.
So now, in here, we've got icing sugar, which we're just going to whisk. Again, if you could help me out again, if you could start pouring water into there.
Yeah.
And we're just going to make...
This is ordinary water.
This is ordinary water.
Yeah.
We're going to make fondant icing. OK, swap that one out, and we're just going to add a little bit of rose water.
OK, just for
to
a
keep
bit of flavour.
Yeah, just a touch. Just a touch. OK.
Rose
That's
water.
enough.
I bet she
That's
liked
enough.
rose water because the reason she used to go on tour, like lots of medieval and late medieval monarchs would go on tour every summer because their palaces stank.
Yeah.
Palaces in London stank. There's always the threat of plague, of course.
Yeah.
So they used to go on tour during the summer, and the palaces were all cleaned and fumigated, and the cesspits were cleaned out and everything, so that they smelled all right. Well, you know, she had the rose water, and those pomanders,
Yes.
you know, they can stick
Well,
under
orange,
an
the
orange
orange
with the
with the
cloves
clove.
in it that
Yeah.
she can walk around, so she doesn't have to smell all these things. I think medieval and Tudor England must have smelt rather bad.
It's a very smelly time, yeah. Now, we're just going to flood this all over this biscuit. Get it all in there.
Yep.
Like so.
That looks good.
Okay. Next, we're going to put that one back. And that, at room temperature, doesn't have to go to the fridge. After half an hour...
It'll set entirely
it'll
by itself
set-
at room temperature?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To resemble a bit like your iced bun. Okay?
Yeah, it is like an ice bun.
It's like an ice bun. Right, here we have...
Oh, those are rather nice, aren't they?
Yes. So the same mixture. So this kind of marchpan style kind of biscuits, almost.
These are Tudor roses.
Tudor
That's
roses,
the
exactly.
emblem of the Tudor dynasty. And hearts, by the way.
And hearts.
Remember, there's romance here.
Yes,
This
yes.
is Robert Dudley spending all his fortune trying to impress Queen Elizabeth, so she'll marry him.
Yeah.
Where does the colour come from?
So the hearts have just been sprayed. So you basically can get that in all good kind of cooking shops. It's just a gold spray. And then the Tudor roses we've just painted with red food dye. And all we're going to do is put a rose followed by a heart followed by a rose all the way around.
A bit of a hint, isn't it, to Queen Elizabeth?
It is. It is. I think he was a very, very thoughtful man.
He was. Not a very lucky man in this case, though, was he?
No.
That looks really nice.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And that, Michael, is my marchpan rose.
How are we going to attack it?
Right. I'm going to cut you a nice wedge.
Yeah, a segment.
Yes. Actually doesn't feel as kind of...
biscuity, chunky?
Yeah, it's sort of chunky. I was expecting it to be a bit more like a crunchier as you go in, but it's actually very much like marzipan. And I'll just give you a little bit of rose here as well.
Oh,
Michael.
yeah, I like a bit of Tudor rose.
Yeah. There we go.
That looks
Go
good.
for it.
It's quite a bit to get in your mouth at one go, you know.
Very marzipan texture, isn't it?
A rose petal comes across a lot. It's marzipanish without being marzipan. It's nice and sweet, which is what the Tudors wanted, wasn't
Yeah.
it? The sweetness. I'm surprised you didn't marry him after that.
I am as well. All that work and effort.
Funny, isn't it, to think that we think of Elizabeth with her blackened teeth and bad breath and all that kind of stuff as, you know, horrible. But actually, she was the height of fashion. Having black teeth in Tudor times was a sign you were wealthy, because only the wealthy could afford sugar. So some of them even painted their teeth black. Amazing how it all changes. 1575, actually a really good dish. Well done. Hello, I'm Michael Burke. Welcome to a brand new series of royal recipes. This time, we're at Westonbirt House, formerly a grand country house, now a boarding school, which has played host to royal visitors for over 100 years. In this series, we're delving even further back in time to reveal over 600 years of royal food heritage. You play Anne Boleyn, and I will play Henry VIII.
And we've been busy unlocking the secrets of Britain's great food archives, discovering rare and unseen recipes that have been royal favourites through the ages. From the earliest royal cookbook in 1390...
It's so precious, so special that I'm not allowed to touch it.
...to Tudor treats from the court of Henry VIII.
I can't wait for this. 1, 2, 3.
We'll be exploring the great culinary traditions enjoyed by the royal family, from the grand to the groundbreaking, as well as the surprisingly simple.
I did think that was going to be a disaster.
As we hear from a host of royal chefs.
Prince Philip would walk past or pop his head in and say, "What's for dinner? What are we having?" Oh yeah, it's not just a normal kitchen.
And meet the people who provide for the royal table.
It's OK for the Queen, it's OK for everyone.
Welcome to Royal Recipes. There's nothing quite like a royal event for sheer scale and grandeur. Whether it's a royal wedding, a jubilee, or even just a party, the royals know how to do it in style. And the food enjoyed at these great occasions is designed to impress.
So we're rolling out the red carpet and sparing no expense. Today on Royal Recipes...
You might have to duck. Oh!
Chef Anna Ha creates a culinary masterpiece.
That looks amazing.
Oh, look at that.
Dr. Annie Gray is shown a precious antique with a peculiar royal claim to fame.
This is the oldest silver chamber pot in the country.
It's incredible.
And Chef Rob Kennedy remembers catering for a right royal occasion.
To me, perfect recipe, fit for a king.
With me in the Royal Recipes kitchen is Executive Chef Anna Ha, and we're starting off in style today. Unless I'm very much mistaken, this is a bottle of champagne. Very thoughtful of you.
Michael, that's not for you, that's for the fish.
Ah, so what are you cooking?
I'm going to cook salmon in champagne today.
That sounds really good. Now, this is a real royal recipe from the 17th century, from the legendary chef Patrick Lamb, who was master chef to 4 monarchs in the 17th and 18th centuries. And this is one of his dishes. So how does it work?
Well, actually, you can open it as long as you promise not to drink all of it. So I'm going to start our poaching liquid. I have some shellfish stock here.
Okay. Woo. You might have to duck. Ready?
Yes.
Oh
my God!
Quick. It takes years of practice to be able to do this, you know.
Okay, well, I'm going to use about half a bottle of champagne, which is quite a lot.
It certainly is.
I'm just going to add some bay leaf, some peppercorn, and some sliced shallot.
This is the recipe that Patrick Lamb did for Charles II, the merry monarch in the middle of the 17th century.
He would be merry if he was...
If he had lots of champagne. He was quite a character, Patrick Lamb, actually. He was master chef for nearly 50 years.
Wow.
He published this book in 1710, and this recipe is actually in it, in the book Royal Cookery, or The Complete Court Cook, containing the choicest receipts in all the particular branches of cookery now in use in the Queen's palaces. So there it is.
So I'm just seasoning our salmon now, and I'm going to place it into the
That is
tray.
a lovely, lovely piece of salmon.
Beautiful piece of salmon. So our liquid's coming up to boil now, so I'm just going to pour some of the liquid on top of the fish so that it cooks nice and evenly.
It's a real luxury dish, this, isn't it? I mean,
It is.
Wonderful salmon, the champagne and so on. I suppose you've got to see it in the context of the time, haven't you? I mean, there's Charles II, we've had the Civil War, his father's head was chopped off, and Puritanism and that idea of excess and luxury and self-indulgence was banned. It was a very stern and a strict time. And then you had the restoration of the monarchy, Charles II comes back, and all of a sudden luxury and pleasure and everything are fashionable again. And that's the sort of historical context within which this dish was created. If you're actually saying salmon in champagne, you're hitting 2 buttons at the same time.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Michael. I'm also going to add caviar to it, just to add a little bit more luxury to it. I'm just going to chop a little bit of dill, which I think has got a fabulous flavour to go with salmon.
Round about the time that this wonderful dish was being created by Patrick Lamb for Charles II, you know, an awful lot was going on at that time. The court was back, luxury was back, but there were still, you know, big tragedies and hardships going on. The Great Fire of London was the same decade, the plague, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, some people had it good and some people had it really bad. Now, what are you going to do?
I'm going to lift...
You're going to get it out?
Yes. I'm going to lift
now,
the
this is
salmon out of here.
This is a bit of a dangerous time, isn't it?
Yes, this is a bit of a dangerous time.
You're trying to get it out in one piece.
In one piece. So that's...
Well done, Anna. Well done, well done, well done. Look at that.
Yes. Oh, you'd swear I did this for a living. Okay, perfect, wonderful.
Wow.
Oh, I'm delighted with that now. That's
Doesn't
great.
that look utterly splendid?
So now I'm
Now
going
what
to
are you gonna
make the sauce from the liquid that we poached it in.
All that champagne
All that champagne will not go to waste. And just grab a tea towel.
with flavours of shellfish, with all those lovely things you stuck in.
If you wouldn't mind, Michael, just to remove the shallots off the fish there
Oh,
for
okay.
me, please.
Yep. Do I need to save them for eating or just get rid of them totally?
I think just put them on the side, yeah.
Okay. Patrick Lamb was even more of a celebrity chef than you, Anna, I think, if that is possible. I mean, 3 coronation feasts he was responsible for, and the one for William and Mary in 1689. The feast cost the equivalent these days of £1 million, which is amazing. But get this, he himself was paid for that one meal by the royals £100. It doesn't sound much now.
How much?
£20,000
For one meal?
For one meal. Do you know that's even more than you get?
That's a lot more than I get.
Come on, what's happening over here?
Okay, so
Lots of sizzle.
just bringing up the cooking liquid to the boil. I'm
Yep.
going to add the cream to it.
Right.
So this needs a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
Just a little pinch of salt in there. I'm going to give it another...
Little whisk round.
Yeah. So I'm just going to whisk in some butter.
Oh, it's not rich enough, eh?
It's not rich enough. If you whisk in the butter too soon, it will split.
You do all these things gradually, don't you?
Gradually, slowly,
You
slowly.
don't sort of slosh around.
Okay, it looks like our butter's all whisked in there now. So now we're going to add in our caviar.
At the last minute. Might be some left.
Some dill. Might be some left to have with a glass of champagne afterwards.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, talking of which, have we got any glasses? Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. So I'm going to dress this now with some
the glasses
beautiful
there.
watercress, a little bit of pea shoots. So I'm just going to put a little bit of olive oil on these.
So how are you going to put the sauce on?
I'm going to pour it into a jug first. So I'm going to just pour it over the top
Right
of the
over the top.
fish.
Oh, look at that.
And then I'm going to finish it now
Yep.
with some lemon zest.
Zest of lemon.
And what goes so well with this is just some lovely crusty bread. And if you like a little bit of mayonnaise before you break your salmon, put it on the bread.
Mayonnaise as well. And of course, what we desperately need with this is champagne.
Would you like to pour?
I would like to. Well, I'd like to drink it. I don't know about pour it. Here we go. Observe the fine technique.
I think you've done this before, Michael.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Right. Come on,
Right.
let's have a go.
Onto the
Are
bread.
you going to put it onto the bread?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Oh, it's lovely, isn't it? You cook the salmon beautifully. The sauce is great. Salmon in champagne, fit for the merry monarch himself.
A luxurious royal recipe, and just the thing for a regal banquet.
And no royal occasion is complete without liberal quantities of booze. One of Britain's oldest purveyors of wines and spirits has been supplying the royal family since the beginning of the last century.
Wine expert Joe Fattorini went to the centre of Mayfair to uncork the story.
Berry Brothers and Rudd has an illustrious history stretching back over 315 years, based here at 3 St James's Street, opposite St James's Palace in the fashionable heart of London. You could say from the outset, it's always had a royal connection.
Being neighbours with the reigning monarch was a good start for the business. Simon Berry is the 8th generation of his family to work at this supplier of fine wines. But it hasn't always sold wine.
The business itself started in 1698, founded by a lady called the Widow Bourne. We don't know anything else about her. We don't even know her Christian name. And she decided to open a shop basically selling groceries, specialising quite soon in tea and coffee, the most expensive drinks of their day. Our most expensive tea cost £10 for a pound of tea. And this was at a time when the average wage was £15 a year. So that makes some of these bottles look marvellously cheap in comparison.
It was the Widow Bourne's daughter, who first sold goods to royalty.
43 Cheval Blanc.
George III bought their coffee during the 1700s. Later that century, they began to specialise in wine.
That's really good stuff, and very expensive.
By the 1900s, they were supplying a different king with booze.
In 1903, King Edward VII bought himself a horseless carriage, which was a Daimler. And it was an open car, like all cars were in those days. 1903 was a very cold winter, and his doctor was very concerned that His Majesty might contract a bit of pneumonia. So he came to us and said, could you produce a warming cordial that His Majesty can drink as he is driving the car? And incidentally, you'd better make it nice and strong. And for 30 years, we only sold it to the royal family. You couldn't buy it from us unless you were royal.
It's got a lovely sort of gingery afterglow,
oh, yes.
But it is good and strong, isn't it?
But nowadays you can't really say, why don't you have a bottle in your glove compartment when you're driving along the M4? I'm not sure that would go down that very well.
It is how times have moved on. Does this still get sold to the royal household today?
I'm sorry not to tell you that, but yes, it does.
The company has held a plethora of royal warrants. Simon sells wine to both the Queen and Prince Charles.
Ask away.
But he has another rather special role. He's the official clerk of the royal cellars.
I run a committee who every so often meet to taste the wines that will be served at Buckingham Palace or Sandringham or Balmoral, which is a nice thing to do.
And how do you come across a role like this? It's not something that you see advertised in the back of the metro.
The reason why I was appointed is because I'm unbelievably discreet.
Today, Simon helps select the wine for the royal household. But back in the 1920s, his shop stocked the cellar of a far smaller regal home.
Now then, Simon, what is this?
Well, this is probably the most royal collection of bottles that we have. These are the bottles that were created for Queen Mary's doll's house, which is this amazing doll's house. It was something that was designed by Sir Edwin Lutyens, the most famous architect of his day. There's running water, there's electric light, and there is this cellar of wine. And we were commissioned to produce these bottles, and whatever it says on the label, the bottles contain.
There are some of your own labels.
There's a cognac here, there is some sherry.
You know my favourite thing in this? There's the record book, and it has received and then consumed. Yes. And there are items that have been consumed.
Well, you know, thirsty dolls.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. So, should you or I ever be invited to a royal celebration, you'll know that you're in very safe hands.
Talking of wine, in 1972, the story goes that the Queen hosted a dinner for the French president at the time, Georges Pompidou, and she wanted English wine. So they ordered some English wine to be sent to France, to the Paris embassy, where it was all taking place. But it was impounded. The English wine was impounded by French customs. And when the French customs officer was asked why afterwards, he said, "It says here, English wine. There is no such thing." Do you like English wine?
Yes, especially sparkling English wine, I think, is really fantastic.
There's a lot of politics, isn't there, when the royal family put on a banquet or something. That's politics and etiquette. Were you taught etiquette at chef's school? You know,
yes.
How to set the table and all that?
We did like a couple of weeks of training, but really that's more for the front of house. Our main focus was really on cooking and shouting.
No, I think it's quite easy. I've got a list here from, the Bible of etiquette, which is debrets. Utensils placed in the order of use from
Yes.
the outside in, obviously forks on the left,
Yep.
knives on the right, tumbler for the water, a different glass for white and red wine, bigger for the red. Why is that?
I think to allow the wine to breathe, so you can get the bouquet.
But at the big royal occasions, all those courses, different wine for each course, it's amazing. People still in a condition to walk out at the end of it.
I'm sure a few of them weren't in any good condition to be walking out.
It's not known whether one royal occasion in particular left guests the worse for wine. But the dinner has gone down in history as an especially pomp-filled event. Back in 1850, Prince Albert attended an extraordinary banquet that was held in his honour in the city of York. Annie Gray tells us more.
Putting on a dinner for a prince means you've really got to impress. Everything from the decor to the people to the food itself has got to scream effort.
The grand feast was hosted at the Guildhall in Mansion House, home to the burghers of York since the 1700s. Richard Pollitt is the curator there.
Richard, paint a picture for me of what it would have looked like when Prince Albert walked into this room.
Well, if you can imagine, this entire hall would be decked by tables with beautiful white damask cloth. He would have passed city maces hanging from the columns and a massive ornamental vase where the stained glass window is today.
So it sounds like a really big occasion. How many people came?
Well, there's 280 invited guests.
Wow.
But on top of that, there would be at least 100 liveried servants. There would be musicians, and also a select number of ladies were invited to watch the gentlemen eat and
To
feast.
watch the gentlemen eat?
Afraid so.
Lucky ladies. Now, behind us I keep catching glimpses of light glimmering off silver, and I'm assuming this is the kind of thing they were eating off.
Yes, some of the silver we have behind us are very much day-to-day sort of eating wares, but we do have one very important piece of silver.
Come on then. Tell me what we've got here. Explain what these vessels would have been used for.
But essentially, these are serving dishes. Now, every piece, though, has got the city coat of arms on, right in the middle. This is part of the city promoting itself. This is marketing the city.
You're not going to mistake where you are you? The idea of someone just gradually taking food from it to uncover that York crest is quite fun, really.
But there's one particular piece of silverware used by Prince Albert which he wouldn't have been eating off.
This is the oldest silver chamber pot in the country.
It's incredible.
It's really quite beautiful, isn't it? Very simple design.
And York crests absolutely everywhere. And what does it say on it? 1672. Oh, my goodness.
It was made in York by a chap called Mamjid Best. And certainly this would be reserved for top table guests.
So when Albert was caught short halfway through dinner, it's this that he would have been using to relieve himself.
He probably nipped to the little anteroom and would have used this pot.
Well, perfectly logical.
And if that's not enough to put you off your dinner, onto the menu. The feast was prepared in the kitchens of Mansion House by a French celebrity chef, Alexis Soyer, arguably the most celebrated cook of the time.
Alexis Soyer is a bit of a hero to me. So hearing that he cooked here for this banquet for Prince Albert is really quite exciting. What was on the menu?
The first course had 32 different types of soup. The second course, 40 roasts. And most of the food has an exotic French-sounding name. So it's à la Lady Mayoress, à la Albert.
I mean, this space just doesn't seem big enough to supply a banquet for 280-odd people.
I've no idea how they did it.
So I note that you sidled round my favourite dish from this particular banquet.
Well, to be honest, there is one particularly disgusting thing. They did create the 100 guinea dish, which essentially costs 100 guineas, but its main ingredient, or most startling ingredient, was turtles' heads with sort of kebab skewers shooting out of their mouths with other sort of animal parts attached to it. And this was presented as the best creation Alexis Soyer would put together for this banquet.
I think the 100 guinea dish must have been spectacular. You've got the oysters from turkeys, you've got bits of woodcock with prawns leaping out of it.
It's really quite disgusting.
Shocking by modern standards, that dish cost the equivalent of over £10,000 today. With 10 times that spent on the event, York's Lord Mayor was clearly out to impress.
The banquet held here in 1850 must have been really magical. To see this room decked out with buntings and flags and with the tables just absolutely piled high with magnificent dishes, cooked by one of my culinary heroes, Alexis Soyer, I would have loved to have been here with Prince Albert.
That lavish affair would certainly have been something to behold.
Now, come on, what can you do that can possibly measure up?
Well, I don't know if it's worth £10,000, but I'm going to make a pulpitoon today, which is a multi-bird roast dish.
So that's one bird inside another bird inside another bird?
Exactly.
So what's inside what?
So we'll start off with the biggest bird. It'll be the turkey, then it will be a duck, and then it will be last chicken. But first of all, I'm going to show you how to batten out some of the meat, because you need to flatten out the meat so that you can roll it into a ballantine.
When you say batten out, you mean beat the devil out?
Yes.
Yep.
You want to cover with the cling film because you want to protect the meat, even though you're going to beat it up. You don't want the rolling pin sticking to the meat and ripping it.
No.
So what's best is kind of consistent, gentle taps as opposed to like really aggressive beating.
Do you think this is a bit of a self-indulgence? I mean, not you. I mean, you know, somebody who wants one bird stuffed inside another bird, a bit of a novelty rather than a bit of haute cuisine.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think the flavours are interesting together, but also it creates quite a large ballantine. So it's a good way to kind of prepare food for a group of people.
And it's a history, isn't it? You know, it's been that sort of wonderful banqueting dish way back into history at the Tudor court. They'd have dozens of songbirds, rather like that 100 guinea meal. You know, the biggest one would be, what, a swan or a peacock or something like that, right down to little quail right in the middle.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's your duck and your chicken.
You've almost doubled the kind of area of the flesh.
Yeah. So I've also actually flattened out some bacon here as well.
Now, what kind of bacon are you using here?
Smoky and streaky. Beautiful, delicious smoky flavour, and the fat to add a little bit more kind of fat and moisture to the three-bird roast, because this is turkey breast, duck breast and chicken breast, so they're all...
Not much fat.
Yeah, they're all quite lean, so the bacon kind of helps reinforce that, as will the force meat that we will be adding in between the layers as well.
So what is it, force meat?
It's a stuffing made of turkey, chicken and duck legs. You down the center. Okay, so we're ready to place our turkey. So I'm going to season the meat, and this is very important. A little bit of beautiful, freshly cracked pepper.
Now, you're going to put the force meat
Yes.
In between each layer?
That's right.
And you've also put some herbs in there by the look of it.
Yes,
Have you? What sort of thing have you got?
Chopped parsley, a little bit of thyme as well. Okay, then we'll layer on our duck breast.
And the duck next?
I'm just going to season the duck meat as well.
Once more. Yeah.
Once more, don't be shy.
There is a long tradition of these kind of bolted together dishes, you know, going all the way back to... There was a dish called... Oh, what was it? It was called the cock and thrice.
That's a catchy name.
Yeah. And the idea was that they got the head of a sucking pig and the kind of rear of a turkey, and they sewed them together. Stuffed them and sewed them together. What do you think all that was about?
Drama. That's just
well,
drama.
yeah, drama. But I've got a theory, because that was about the time, you know, just after Columbus and all that sort of thing, and people were venturing off into these wild places, the Americas and the South Seas and around Africa and so on. And the sailors were coming back with stories of monsters and, you know, here be dragons and all that kind of stuff. And I think, you know, people in the kitchen thought, oh, I can knock up a monster. I can knock up something strange and exotic.
And they did.
And they did.
A perky.
Yeah. Berkey, a new dish is born. Well done.
Next, I'm going to put the chicken breasts in. You can see with each layer, it's slightly smaller and slightly smaller because you want to be able to roll the ballantine.
Yeah. My word, look at that. A little mountain of meat.
Okay, now
Striated
it's
mountain of meat.
time to roll. So I'm going to bring it over, 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 pull it in tight, and I'm going to tuck this turkey just under a little bit and squeeze it over again.
Ooh, you've made a giant sausage.
Yes.
It's not going to get away
Sealed
now.
And nice and tight. And what you need to do is chill that for maybe overnight, if you can. And what that will do is that it will set all the meat up together. And when you go to transfer it into the tin foil, it'll just leave it as a piece. You'll butter the tin foil and place that on. So I've actually roasted one of these already, and you'll find it just over there.
I'll get it. Yep. Here we go.
Yeah, get rid of these. So I cooked this for about 2 hours at 160 degrees.
160, that's quite low.
Then I turned the oven up for another hour to about 180.
It's really heavy, really quite a lot of meat there.
There's a lot of meat here.
Oh, it's going to be brilliant. I just know it.
That looks amazing.
Oh, look at that.
So you're just going to have to wait a little bit longer before I get carving because I'm going to get the veg on. Quite simple. Since there's a lot going on with the meat, I thought I'd do some mashed potato and some blanched broccoli. I've got some nice chicken sauce here, so that's reduced down chicken stock with a little bit of thyme. So I'm just going to whisk in some butter.
I mean, it looks really impressive, doesn't it? I mean, it's not quite the 100 guinea dish, if I may say so, with its turtles' heads, its capons, its turkeys, its poulards, its fowls, its grouse, its pheasants, its partridges, its plovers, its woodcock, its quails, its snipe, its green pigeons, its larks, and all the rest.
Oh, my goodness.
You've got 3.
I'm so grateful that I just had 3. Okay, so I'll turn them down low, and I think it's time to carve.
I think it probably is. Oh, that does look good, doesn't it? Already.
Oh, wow, look
duck.
at that.
Yes.
So you can see obviously your bacon, your turkey, force meat, duck. More force meat, and your chicken.
You've got the lot.
Our veg should be ready now.
Okay. Do you want this plate?
Yes, perfect. Okay. So we have our
creamy, very buttery.
Lovely, beautiful
green broccoli.
broccoli.
That's great.
Last but not least.
Oh, look at that.
Okay, tuck in, tuck in.
Absolutely. After you, Madam Chef.
Want a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And that's the trick, that's the challenge, to get a bit of everything in your mouth at the same time. Fortunately, I've got a big enough mouth to be able to do this. Oh, look at all that. You know, bird in the hand's worth 3 in the bush, or 3 in the mouth, I suppose. There you go. Oh, I like that. Do you know, I didn't have very high expectations of this. I thought it was just a gimmick, really. But it's a dish suitable for any, you know, special occasion, isn't it, really? A kind of, how can I put it? A 50 guinea dish.
A cut price 100 guinea dish, but nonetheless impressive for that.
A chef who's no stranger to a bit of royal pomp and circumstance is Rob Kennedy. He's based at the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst and has cooked for the Queen and other members of the royal family several times. One occasion was a lavish dinner hosted by Prince Charles for no fewer than 7 Middle Eastern monarchs.
This extravagant supper was a celebration of Sandhurst's 200-year anniversary and its tradition of welcoming overseas cadets, including many Arabian royals over the years. With 7 foreign kings and the future King of England in attendance, it required a show-stopping menu.
For the Middle Eastern dinner at Old College, I cooked for the main course a lovely beef dish, and that's what we're going to be showing you now. Top royal dining.
When Prince Charles hosts such grand meals, only the finest British ingredients are used. Rob starts with a mini braised beef pudding. He begins by caramelising seasonal root vegetables in a hot pan with garlic, thyme and star anise.
So we're going to keep the same pan now, and we've got this beautiful piece of cheek. And all of this fat here is going to become gelatinous and sticky and yummy. So we pop that into our pan and just let that colour and caramelise.
Once the beef is lightly browned, Rob pops the veg back into the frying pan with a teaspoon of tomato puree and a pint of beef stock.
You can see there, it's a lovely, nice jelly of beef stock.
He brings it to the boil before transferring the whole lot into a covered saucepan.
And then in it goes.
And braising it for 6.5 hours at 150 degrees Celsius. When the slow cooking is complete, the beef will be tender and melting.
Absolutely yummy.
It's then removed from the liquid with some of the veg and left to cool.
And if a couple of bits of onion or thyme are in there, it doesn't matter. Just make sure it's not the star anise. That'll kind of be a little bit crunchy.
The remaining gravy is strained and reserved for service. Rob then takes flour, suet, water and a little salt and whips up a rich pastry.
When I had this Middle Eastern dinner, the closest I probably got to that many kings was 4 in a pack of cards. So, you know, a real achievement, and something I believe will never, ever be done, definitely in my culinary career, or probably done, you know, in the history of Sandhurst again. So, what an honour. What an absolute honour.
Rob rolls out small discs of pastry and adds the braised beef cheek. He then moulds them into dumplings.
We're going to wrap that in cling film. So that goes in there, it comes up, and we put its raincoat on, give it a nice twist. This way, you get to make them perfectly round. And then you get your little cling film tie, and then you just go round. And then at the end of it, you get the two together, and simply tie a knot. Take the scissors and cut off. And that there is your beautiful braised beef pudding ready to steam for 50 minutes. Once the steam is nice and hot and the water's boiling, pop it in there and that will then cook.
Rob has already marinated a fillet of steak in star anise, thyme and garlic for 12 hours. He lightly seals the steak in a hot pan with herbs and butter.
Smells delicious.
Before roasting it at 180 degrees for 8 minutes.
During the meal, I guess, no one really puts their hands up and says, thanks very much, it's great. However, on most of the events, well, in fact, let me be modest, on all of the events we've done, we've always had clean plates, so we're doing something right. It'd be nice to have a letter, though, you know, or an MBE.
Rob plates up the steak with a garnish of baby root vegetables, creamed potato and sautéed cabbage. All that's left is the mini beef pudding.
And that little suet dumpling pudding can just sit in there, very proud, very precise.
The dish is completed by adding the braised gravy, baby watercress and a dusting of dehydrated horseradish.
This dish was designed to be special but be British and celebrate Sandhurst and 200 years, but more importantly, show off to our visiting guests being the kings of what we can produce. To me, perfect recipe, fit for a king.
I would have thought catering for so many heads of state would be pretty daunting, wouldn't you, Anna? I mean, imagine them all in your restaurant. Imagine them being able to afford it. What are you doing now?
I'm going to make Black Forest Gateau.
Ah, now this is in honour of Queen Victoria, isn't it? Because she loved chocolate and she loved cherries.
And her mother was German, and of course her father was from the British royal family, originally German. So she loved everything German: cherries, chocolate, Black Forest Gatto. Come on, what do you do first?
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to make is the last thing we'll be putting on the cake, which is the cherry topping. So we have some fresh cherries that have been stoned.
They look fabulous.
I'm just going to mix a little bit of water in with corn flour.
It's the cherry brandy, isn't it? That's the key thing.
The kirsch.
Where is the cherry brandy?
Well, it's in here. It's got some cherries soaking in it.
It's called, actually, I think in German, the Schwarzwälder Kirschwasser, which means Black Forest cherry brandy, I suppose.
Sound like a native.
Yeah, well, I am. My family originally came from the Black Forest long ago.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so I've just added a spoonful of cherry compote in here as well.
Right.
And I'm just going to add them to the cherries and just give it a stir.
But the cherries, that was Queen Victoria's all-time favourite, I think.
Oh,
she
really?
had cherries, yeah. She didn't have Black Forest Gatto, but she had cherries with rice pudding at her Golden Jubilee dinner in Windsor in 1887. OK, now what?
Right, so we're going to make a sabayon, which is essentially egg yolk and sugar whisked into a beautiful, creamy, light foam.
This is rich, isn't it?
This is rich.
Imagine doing that by hand. I mean, what a lot of beating that would have taken.
Yeah. And this is for one cake. And, you know, the truth is, you know, they would never have been making one cake.
No.
OK, so this is good. Next, our sugar goes in the bowl. We're going to whisk up our egg whites.
Right.
And I'm going to give my cherries a little check. Oh, beautiful. So I'm going to take these out, pop them into a bowl, so that they'll be ready for us at the end. Lovely.
I think if you weren't looking, Anna, I might be round there trying those.
So I'm going to fold in my cocoa and my salt while we're waiting for this to whisk. And then you just want to really delicately fold.
That looks gloopy and wonderful, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be really lovely when we get the egg whites in there as well.
Yeah.
OK, this looks like it's done now.
Is this the sort of thing you want, the peaks and all that sort of stuff?
That's it, yeah. So I'm being really careful with folding in my egg whites.
Oh, my word, look at that.
OK, so I think we're ready for this to go in the tin.
OK.
Lovely. Oh my God, this is so good.
Yeah, look at that.
This is going to be cooked in the oven at 180 degrees for at least a half an hour.
OK. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
180, half an hour.
Next, we're going to whip our cream. And icing sugar and vanilla.
The vanilla gives it a wonderful flavour, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So you just cut your vanilla pod in half.
Right.
Just want to scrape out the seeds. Hopefully this won't go everywhere.
There's so much richness in this gatto.
I'm just going to strain the kirsch off the cherries.
Right.
OK?
Yep.
Fold that in. It's important that your sponge is really cool when you go to make it, because if you put cream on a warm sponge, it's just going to melt. So I have a sponge that I made earlier here.
Nice and cool?
Nice and cool. I'm just going to start off with my base layer. Start off with a little bit of the jam that we put inside our cherries.
Spread it out.
Spread that around. Now our beautiful, gorgeous cream.
What would my doctor say about this? Now, how thick do you make these layers?
To be honest, I
suppose
really
it's
believe
personal taste,
it
isn't it?
should be as big as possible because, you know...
Well, it's not an understated pudding, is it?
No,
I mean,
and...
This is all about display and kind of conspicuous consumption. And the last one?
A last layer, which I'm going to soak with kirsch. Okay, and now for the finishing touches. And our cake stand.
Oh, yeah, it's got to have a cake
Yes.
stand.
Okay, and then I just have a little bit more whipped cream to go around the
Oh,
outside.
yeah. And we're really short of cream for this dish. It's a kind of heart attack on a cake stand, isn't it?
Heart attack of excitement. Okay, and I think I might need your help with this one, Michael.
Okay.
So...
To lift it?
Yes. You have to lift this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I love it. There we go. And now we're just going to put these around the side like this.
Making it a kind of stockade.
Yeah.
I'm doing it incredibly carefully.
You're doing a great job, actually.
I am. I think I'm a natural. It'd be a shame to eat this, wouldn't it?
Absolutely not. Be a shame not to eat it. Okay, and now we're going to top it with our cherries.
And the smell.
Last one.
Okay. Whoa, look at that. The Schwarzwälder Kirschwasser cake.
And Black Forest Gatto, you and me.
Let's dig in.
So...
Look at that. Go on, after you.
Okay. That's so good. It's exactly what you want a Black Forest to taste like.
It's really light, though, isn't it? But it's rich. The cherries give it that wonderful juiciness as well. Oh, Victoria, you've got it right. That was wonderful. Hello, I'm Michael Burke. Welcome to a brand new series of royal recipes. This time, we're at Westonbirt House, formerly a grand country house, now a boarding school, which has played host to royal visitors for over 100 years. In this series, we're delving even further back in time to reveal over 600 years of royal food heritage. You play Anne Boleyn, and I will play Henry VIII.
And we've been busy unlocking the secrets of Britain's great food archives, discovering rare and unseen recipes that have been royal favourites through the ages. From the earliest royal cookbook in 1390.
It's so precious, so special that I'm not allowed to touch it.
To Tudor treats from the court of Henry VIII.
I can't wait for this. 1, 2, 3.
We'll be exploring the great culinary traditions enjoyed by the royal family, from the grand to the groundbreaking, as well as the surprisingly simple.
I did think that was going to be a disaster.
As we hear from a host of royal chefs.
Prince Philip would walk past or pop his head in and say, "What's for dinner? What are we having?" You know, oh yeah, it's not just a normal kitchen.
And meet the people who provide for the royal table.
It's OK for the Queen, it's OK for everyone.
Welcome to Royal Recipes.
This time, we're exploring festival food, and we'll discover whether the royals like to do things the traditional way when it comes to celebrating the various feast days and holidays in the British calendar.
Coming up, we discover how a Tudor king dined at Easter after giving up treats for Lent.
The idea of Henry VIII giving up anything, well, you know where I'm going there.
We'll delve into the records to see what Queen Victoria was served at a royal family Christmas dinner.
Here you've got a roast turkey and sausages, plum pudding.
And we'll find out what Prince Charles tasted to celebrate the Hindu Festival of Lights.
That was one thing he sampled. He loved it.
Well, we're in the Royal Recipes kitchen with executive chef Anna Ha, and take a look at this. What are you cooking?
I'm going to make boeuf rôti à l'anglaise.
It's English roast beef, for goodness sake. as served to the Prince of Wales, Bertie, eldest son of Queen Victoria, in 1875 on a naval ship in Calcutta Harbour, and they did a Christmas banquet for him. And this was one of 5 main courses, let alone all the other courses that he had on that ship. Bœuf rôti à l'anglaise. What sort of cut of beef is it?
This is rib of beef. It's a perfect cut for a large roast dinner. The best way to cook this is to cook it at a kind of medium temperature, 180
degrees. Well, what do you know?
For about 2 hours or so. So I'm going to cut some vegetables to go underneath the beef, and that will really help to make a delicious gravy at the end.
Okay. This is a big, big dish, isn't it?
This is a big dish.
He had a hearty appetite at Bertie. He had 50 of his closest friends on this ship, HMS Serapis. I'm just thinking, in Calcutta Harbour,
I know,
in all that
yes.
heat. And do you know what they had? They had the ship's crew trying to turn the deck into a Christmas wintry scene. They used lots and lots of cotton wool to make it look as though it had snowed in Calcutta.
It must have been incredible.
Now tell me, what do you look for in a really, really wonderful joint of beef like this?
Well, you're looking for a beautiful bright red colour. You're also looking for good marbling. And
what, the fat inside the meat?
That is the fat, and it's so important because that's what gives it loads and loads of flavour. So I'm going to place my vegetables in this roasting tray, and my beef is going to sit on top of them. And then all of that juice, as it comes down into the pan, essentially we're going to have a gravy from it. So I'm just going to season the beef. Very important.
This is the ultimate British or English dish, isn't it?
Absolutely. Especially when it's served with the famous Yorkshire pudding.
Yorkshire pudding, absolutely.
An Irish woman making Yorkshire puddings. This should be interesting.
Should it be allowed?
Okay,
there we go. Are you okay? Do you want a hand?
Oh, I'm fine. So I'm going to put some beef dripping on top of this now.
I mean, this was his Christmas banquet dish for him and his mates in India. But would you rather have a great big joint like this of beef, or would you prefer turkey, which now I think, you know, turkey's the traditional Christmas dish now?
Absolutely, I would prefer to have this. Turkey, for me, is an interesting meat, but not as glamorous and delicious as a rib of beef.
Now, what are you going to do with that?
So this would go into the oven for at least 2 hours. You know, you check it after 2 hours. But I was in early today, and
we can't wait.
I've roasted one up already for you. So I'll get rid of this down here.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you how to make Yorkshire pudding batter. 300 grams of flour.
Yep.
5 eggs and 250 mils of milk, and that should give you actually.
That's the right combination.
I think that's the right combination. So I'm just going to give this a good whisk.
Yeah.
And then I'll add the last of the milk just in at the end.
So you're doing this for, imagine you're doing this for the future Edward VII, he was Prince of Wales then. He was really rather wicked.
Wicked naughty or wicked bad?
Oh, no, I think wicked naughty rather than anything else. Had a bit of a reputation, you know, drank quite a lot, ate an enormous amount, gambled, and did have a bit of a reputation with the ladies. So much so, he had a wonderful nickname. He was called Edward the Caresser.
So I've just added the last of the milk, and it should be the consistency of double cream.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's really important that you rest this mixture.
Is that the most common mistake that people make with Yorkshire pudding?
To be honest, I think there's so many mistakes with Yorkshire puddings that people make that when you are cooking it in the oven needs to be very hot. Your tray that you cook your Yorkshire pudding in also needs to be very hot. Your fat needs to be hot. You need to be very fast when you open the oven and pour your mix in.
If you leave the oven open?
Yes. Yorkshire puddings are not for the faint-hearted. They're the soufflé in the English world. Okay, so this mix, you know, you would put in the fridge for a couple of hours. I did rustle one up earlier on. We're going to make some now, if you want to follow me through.
Okay.
Now, in here, we've already got our hot tray, as you can see. And then we're just going to pour it straight in on top. That's it.
Oh, you've got a steady hand. There we go. Closing it up quickly.
Now.
I don't know how you can walk away from them. I'd be sitting there watching them and see if they actually work. Okay, what next?
Okay, now we're going to make the gravy. This is the best bit of a roast dinner for me. I'm going to use the dripping that we cut from the beef earlier on when I was roasting it.
Yep.
I'm going to pour that into the pan, and that's just going to give it a gorgeous
All golden.
beefy flavour.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to have a tablespoon or so of flour.
Yep.
I'm going to give that a little mix.
Yep.
And then I'm going to add a very small teaspoon of mustard powder.
Ah.
So we're just going to cook this flour out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm just going to warm this up slightly. So you want these two pans to be roughly the same temperature.
Okay. So what's in this new pan here?
So this is the meat juices from the beef after it came out of the oven.
Right.
So
Gosh, it
now
all looks
I'm going to add
really rich.
this.
Are you going to put the two together?
Yeah.
Oh.
Now. And now I'm going to add some red wine.
Oh, an absolute essential, I'd say.
Yeah. And then I just want to cook that wine out. So.
I think so. I think Bertie probably had a few glasses of wine. When he eventually became king, he was really quite a successful monarch, I think.
Well, I'm going to add a little bit of butter to this. So you just want to stir
Gosh, that's gone
butter
really
in.
dark and really rich, hasn't it?
Yeah, well,
it's
the
the
red
wine, of course. Yeah, I think it's a Bordeaux.
Gonna have a little taste.
Yep. Unless you want some more red wine
Delicious.
in it.
No,
Ain't
that's
got enough?
perfect. No.
Gosh, that looks smooth.
Yeah, I think we're done now. If you want
Okay.
to get the beef.
Oh, yeah, let me create a bit of space. There we go. Here we come. Oh! It really is unbelievably heavy. There we go. There we go. Mm. Oh, yeah. Go on, pour the gravy first, and then we'll do the big reveal. If I grab one side, you grab the other. Yep, yep, thunder of drums. You grab that. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yay!
That's beautiful.
Oh, where do you start with that?
I also have a little bit of cabbage to put
Oh,
in
yes,
there.
yes, we must have a bit of cabbage.
It's so important with a large piece of beef like this, to be honest, with any meat, that after you've roasted it, that you rest it.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it should be approximately half the time, approximately. So we're almost there, but we can't forget
Oh, don't forget
the most important part.
those Yorkshire puddings.
Those Yorkshire puddings.
You
I'll go
nervous,
get
Salmon?
them? No, I am not.
Quietly confident?
Yes, loudly confident.
Loudly confident. Yeah, you're not quietly anything, are you, Anna? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Look at that.
So here's our Yorkshire puddings.
Oh, 8 huge nuclear explosions in the oven. Look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, well done. Tara, bœuf rôti à l'anglaise, as served to the Prince of Wales in Calcutta Harbour, Christmas 1875.
Perfect fare for a royal Christmas, even one spent in the heat of India. And a fine festive dish to set before a king in waiting.
After you.
No, I insist
You sure?
first, yes.
That lovely meat. Oh, absolutely melting. Well, that's a dish that makes you feel patriotic. The roast beef of old England that Bertie had for Christmas. Christmas as we know it today is very much an invention of the Victorian era. The Christmas tree, crackers, and even the food we serve all owe a great deal to the influence of Victoria and Albert.
This is Osborne House on the Isle of Wight, where Dr. Annie Gray unwrapped the story.
It was Victoria and Albert's holiday home, a place where they could play with their families, bathe by the sea. But it was also, after 1861, when Albert died, the place where Victoria spent all of her Christmases.
The English Heritage Curator at Osborne House is Michael Hunter.
I know that Queen Victoria liked to say she was responsible for introducing the Christmas tree to Britain. But is that really true?
She didn't. The Christmas tree was introduced much earlier in the 18th century by Queen Charlotte, who was German. And the whole idea of bringing in a real tree and decorating it is a German tradition. So, of course, when she married the German Prince Albert, well, of course, what do you have to have at Christmas? A huge decorated German fir tree. And so the idea of that was really popularised by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert in the early years of their marriage.
This period also gave rise to a number of other Christmas favourites. Crackers were invented, and the sending of Christmas cards first began during Victoria's reign. But the royals also influenced the meaning of Christmas, making it far more family-orientated.
The Georgian Christmas, before Victoria, was much more riotous and fun and full of drunkenness and very, very adult. Victoria really did change a lot of that, didn't she, by projecting this image of family and what I suppose is really quite a conservative, intimate Christmas.
Generally, I think they were trying to improve the image of the royal family. There was an effort, I think, to make the monarchy at that time a bit more sort of respectable, bourgeois, I suppose, middle class in sort of image. And so that ideal family unit that Victoria and Albert were projecting was something that certainly focused in on Christmas. And the Illustrated London News in 1848 famously published an engraving of Victoria and Albert standing on either side of the wonderfully decorated, lighted Christmas tree with their family.
A scene of festive domestic bliss. But despite the similarities, there were still a few differences between today's Christmas and those enjoyed by the royals in the mid-19th century.
Queen Victoria was fond of presents, and the presents were displayed with the tree, but they weren't wrapped, were they?
No opportunity to tear off the wrapping paper on, you know, Christmas morning or Christmas Eve, as it was here at Osborne. Yeah, everything displayed very formally on these Christmas present tables.
But they did have candles, didn't they? They were lit up, the trees, in a delightful display of possibly burning down the entire house.
Yeah, no electric fairy lights in those days, all real candles. I mean, they were only lit 2 or 3 times over the festive periods. And I think it must have been quite memorable because visitors to Osborne and members of the household do record the fact that, you know, the rooms were glittering and, you know, the trees looked fantastic and all the decorations were absolutely, you know, breathtaking. So it must have been quite a sight.
Queen Victoria had a significant impact on our Christmas traditions, in particular the festive foods that feature on dinner tables today.
In front of me, I've got a dining ledger. Now, these ledgers were records of all the things eaten at the royal palaces for whichever day of the year it was. This one is for Christmas Day, 1897. By the 1890s, the Queen was eating sequential meals. She had 7 or 8 courses. So she starts off with pheasant soup and goes on to fried whiting. But here you've got a roast turkey and sausages, plum pudding, what we now know as Christmas pudding. Going on to the entremet, she's got asparagus, which of course is not in season at Christmas, a tribute to the brilliance of the kitchen gardens at the royal palaces. She has mince pies, she has a rice pudding. One of the most interesting features is a side table, which was always a feature of the Queen's Christmas dinner. And it was an enormous table laid out with a stuffed boar's head, a huge game pie, a massive baron of beef, 300 or 400 pounds in weight, with the tail curving over it. That table was there just in case the diners at the Queen's Christmas meal got a little bit hungry after their 7 or 8 courses and decided to have a nibble on something else. This is a tremendous amount of food, but through it we can just see the glimmerings of a modern Christmas meal. So perhaps this Christmas, when we sit down to our beef and our plum pudding, we could raise a small glass of whiskey to Queen Victoria for helping us to reach the modern Christmas.
It isn't just the modern British Christmas that bears Victoria's regal stamp. It was during her reign that chocolate Easter eggs began to be enjoyed. And sending Easter greetings cards to friends and loved ones became fashionable.
Easter, of course, celebrates the new life that bursts forth in the spring. And no Easter feast is complete without some spring lamb.
Marion Jones has farmed the slopes of the Cambrian Mountains since he was a boy. And his lamb has graced the royal table.
This is a classic crossbred lamb out of the Welsh Mountain Ewe, and the father would be a Texel tup. It is pretty lively. This particular lamb is about 3 months old at the moment. And these crossbred lambs, if you can show you, they are wider, so there's more meat on the bone. We specialise in the spring lamb market, the lamb in January and February. The grass quality is so much better in spring, March and April. It's nice and fresh. They're sort of slaughtered around 12 to 16 weeks old, and the meat is very, very tender and sweet. And the feedbacks we get is very encouraging all the time.
Marion is among a band of sheep farmers on these hills who've joined forces to promote their wares.
The Cumbrian Mountain Lamb Group, Prince Charles, he's put his effort and weight behind the group. At the very outset, he made a painting of the local mountain area, and that painting is on the Cumbrian Mountain Lamb branding on the packages when it's been sold.
Marion's biggest royal claim to fame was supplying the lamb for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee celebrations.
Coincidentally, in the year 2012, we met Prince Charles in person in the Royal Welsh, and we asked him how the meat was, and he said, very, very nice indeed.
10 miles from the mountain fields is the village of Llandovery. Butcher Di Matthews has been running a family business here for nearly 30 years.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
thank you.
Di's shop has had royal recognition. Charles visited in 2011. And Marion's lamb is on the royal shopping list.
We've been supplying him now for about 8 years, and you know, it's something that we are very pleased and privileged about.
Today, Di's preparing a leg of Marion's spring lamb.
It's quite a simple homemade stuffing, made with breadcrumbs. We've sorted off some onions, some apricots and some lemon and thyme, and it's very easy stuffing, but a very tasty stuffing. The vegetables will help with the gravy, so if we put the lamb on there, the flavour of the lamb is so good, we don't need more than a little bit of salt and pepper. And the flavour that's in the stuffing will complement the lamb perfectly. And that then will go in the oven for about 3 hours on 180, and that should be absolutely gorgeous when it comes out.
While the lamb's roasting, local carpenter Mike Blowfield installs a plaque to celebrate their royal seal of approval.
Yes, you can give it a wipe.
Really, really good. I'm pleased with that.
Happy with that? Yeah.
Excellent, thank
Excellent.
you.
This year, they were officially granted a royal warrant. It's a huge honour.
It did almost bring a lump to the throat. It was a really proud moment, you know. I thought, well, yes, I have achieved something. It was a wonderful feeling.
And it's all down to the finest cuts of lamb.
It isn't about me, it's about the producers. It's everybody that plays a part in having this fantastic piece of meat on your plate for Sunday lunch. Proof of the pudding, it's in the eating. And that, believe me, is worth the effort.
It's become a tradition to have lamb at Easter, but this is a much older tradition. There's no lamb or any other meat in sight. What are you doing, Anna?
I'm going to make tart out of Lent.
Tart out of Lent.
Yes.
Much older, Tudor dish. What's in it?
So all the things that I guess you weren't allowed to have in Lent are in it. So we have lovely Cheshire cheese.
Definitely no cheese in Lent.
Cream cheese, eggs, flour, butter, and spice, pepper. Something very special to have back then.
Pepper would have been incredibly expensive, wouldn't it? OK, so where do you start?
I'm going to start with the pastry. nice short crust pastry. I'm gonna roll it out
With some flour.
with some flour.
This is a really, really old tradition.
Yeah.
Henry VIII would probably have had something like this at the end of Lent. Though the idea of Henry VIII giving up anything, well, you know where I'm going there.
Yes, absolutely. So this needs to be quite a thick base.
Why?
Because this is fascinating. There is no mold to hold the case in place.
Right.
So the first thing we need to do is make the shape of our base.
A perfect circle.
Rid of that.
Yep.
And the pastry.
Can I take that somewhere?
Yes, thank you, Michael. And then all you need to do is give it a pinch all the way around.
That's great technique, isn't it?
It's like a tart in a tin in one.
Yeah, yeah. That's ingenious.
Okay, so I'm just going to move that onto my
Okay.
baking tray there, and I'm going to move on to the filling. So I'm going to take
Now,
my
what cheese is that?
This is Cheshire cheese.
So it's got to be a crumbly cheese like Cheshire. So
Yeah.
cheddar wouldn't work?
Well, cheddar wouldn't work as well. It'd just be a bit greasy.
Right, right.
So this is nicer. So I'm just going to crumble this into our food mixer, which is actually quite easy to crumble. And then I'm going to pulse it a bit to break it down because
right.
you essentially want to make it into a paste. I'm going to pop the lid on here.
These days, of course, those people who do observe Lent tend to break the fast with chocolate now, don't they? But of course, Henry VIII didn't know anything about chocolate. We didn't have any chocolate in this country until the 1650s, I think. So whatever else he might have overindulged in, chocolate wasn't one of them, okay?
Chocolate wasn't one of them. So I'm going to add in my cream cheese now.
Now, why the cream cheese as well? Is that all part of consistency?
Yeah, exactly. It helps with the consistency. So eggs, pinch of salt. It's not too salty, yeah.
Good.
And then this.
The pepper.
The pepper. Pepper really makes this dish sing.
Nowadays, salt and pepper everywhere.
on
It's so
every single
common.
table.
It's so reasonably cheap. And yet, in those days...
Some people would never have had it.
Oh, absolutely. Far too expensive.
Now, you don't want to leave it in the mixer for too long because you'll add too much air into it and then it'll balloon up too big.
OK, slop it in.
Yeah, that's it.
That does look good, doesn't it? Actually, you need the pepper, don't you, to give it a bit of a briskness.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Bit of bite.
Yeah.
Now, almost there.
Yeah, you've done that.
Now, just flatten it out. So
Yep.
you just want to make sure that you haven't got any little air pockets. So you're just pushing it to the edge each
Into
time.
those little grooves that you've made.
Yeah. Now, normally, you'd want to chill this for probably about 40 minutes. If you put it straight into the oven and the pastry hasn't rested and the mix hasn't rested, it's likely just to kind of
Go blur.
spread. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so would you mind popping that in the fridge
OK.
for me?
Yep.
And hopefully on your way out, you'll pass by the oven and there should be one already in there
Excellent.
baking.
Look at that.
Oh, beautiful.
Look at the colour of that.
Beautiful.
I'll put it on
That's
here.
great. Or maybe here would be
Okay.
good.
There we are.
That's great.
There we go, another burn. I blame you, Anna, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael.
Health and safety, come on.
Okay, so we're going to
What
make our vinaigrette next. This is a mustard vinaigrette, which I think goes really, really well with the cheese and also the pepper.
Bit of sharpness.
So, and a bit of sharpness, yep.
Yep.
So a spoonful of your whole grain mustard.
This whole grain, yeah.
Maybe, I'd say, yeah, a teaspoon of honey. And then just English mustard.
You use honey rather than sugar, I noticed.
Yeah, I think honey's got a little bit more flavour to it.
And in Tudor times, of course.
I'm sure they used a lot of honey.
Because sugar itself was
Very hard to come by.
very hard to come by. Now, what's this?
This is a teaspoon of white wine vinegar.
Yep.
And then I'm going to put, I think maybe 3 teaspoons of olive oil.
Seem to have rather more oil than vinegar.
Yes.
Than I would, in my untutored way, do.
Well, you like more vinegar?
Yeah, I'm a
Yes.
bit of a vinegar freak, really.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good sign. You know, it's a sign
Is
of
it?
someone who has a good palate, yes. You prefer acid to
Oh, I do.
sweetness. So it's a nice emulsion there.
Oh, it's looking
Just
good.
going to give it a little taste for acidity and deliciousness.
It's good.
Yeah.
Shall
You
we
want to
get
just
those?
grab the leaves? Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
just-
great.
Keeping it fresh. There we go.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay,
Okay.
great. So this is just pea shoots, mustard cress, and mustard frills. So I'm going to take a little bit of the dressing. Okay, and now I'm going to give the tart a little cut.
It's a lovely, lovely colour. Kind of apricot colour, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's the cheese.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that looks beautiful on the side.
Brilliant.
My plate. Now, the last thing I'm going to add to this is caraway seeds. Now, caraway seeds are very special. I think they're extremely versatile and very memorable. And caraway is most delicious when you've just chopped it, a little bit like pepper. You know, the reason why we like to ground that.
I think caraway was in much more widespread use in Tudor times because it had been around longer.
Oh my God, you can smell the smell.
You can.
It's beautiful.
Apart from that wonderful smell, what do you think it adds to something like this?
A depth of flavour.
Yeah.
It's depth of flavour, and that's the whole bonus from spices.
No wonder the Tudors and all those people in medieval times valued it so much.
That's it, and we just give this
Now, what are you doing here?
a little roll of our hands, in our hands, so you can kind of create a neat presentation of your salad.
Now you put the salad right on top?
And that way it sits kind of nicely,
Yep.
and then a sprinkling of the caraway seeds on top.
On top of the salad and the pie?
And that's it, and there you have it. Tart out of Lent.
Oh, a celebratory tart. Come on. What's it like?
The acidity of the vinaigrette goes so well with the cheese tart, and then the finish of caraway.
Oh, that's really nice. It's so cheesy and so smooth. And you're right, the salad makes it.
A delicious dish to break a Lenten fast and satisfy even the most indulgent of kings at Easter.
Christianity isn't the only culture to celebrate festivals with food. Prince Charles has let it be known that he intends, when he becomes king, to be known as Defender of Faiths, to reflect modern Britain's multicultural society.
Charles's enthusiasm for the diverse culture of Britain is also reflected in the food he eats. He's visited the West London restaurant of Dipna Anand and her family on a number of occasions.
Smells and looks yummy.
Dipna now serves the delicious Punjabi delicacies her grandfather once made for Maharajas to British royalty. One visit from the prince was at a very special festive time of year.
When Prince Charles visited, that was during the time of Diwali. In fact, it was Diwali Day, so we were quite lucky to have him here with us. Diwali is a festival of lights. We celebrate it in a really big way. So like Christmas, we light lamps, we share great food, especially sweets, and that is said to welcome the goddess Lakshmi, who's the goddess of wealth.
A Diwali tradition is the making and eating of sweet treats.
One of the main desserts is gajar halwa. Everyone loves to cook that. And when Prince Charles was here at the restaurant, that was one thing he sampled. He loved it.
Today, with the help of her dad Gulu, Dipna is recreating the festival dessert enjoyed by Charles and Camilla.
Gajar halwa simply means carrot pudding. It's a hot pudding that I love to eat with ice cream, but it goes really, really well. There's even some single cream. So it's a really royal dessert dish. Right, now that we've grated the carrots and got a bit of strength in our arms, it's time to make the gajar halwa, and we're going to start by sweating the carrots down in the milk. The reason we add milk is to help the carrots cook faster and also add some moisture. When Prince Charles visited, both the Duchess and His Royal Highness were quite intrigued as to how carrots can be made into a Indian dessert, and then they tasted it.
Yes.
They really liked it. They really, really enjoyed it. Indian desserts are massive during Diwali time. Not just things like the gajar halwa, something else that we love eating during Diwali. Dad, bring us over that burfi.
Burfi is an Indian sweetmeat, traditionally made by condensing milk and sweetening with sugar. They're often flavoured with fruits, nuts and spices.
That's a chocolate one. That's a toffee one. And you've got some orange here.
We've also got gajar halwa burfi.
Yeah, that
We've
carrot
got a
pudding
layer
in there.
of carrot pudding here. And then on top, we've got the actual burfi
Which is cooked with the condensed milk.
Yes.
Dad is the worst because he eats too much burfi.
I don't.
So after his dinner, he likes to have, I think, about 2-3 pieces on average.
Once a year, I think it's fine.
Yes.
It takes around 25 minutes for Dipna and Gulu's grated carrot to cook and for the milk to evaporate.
You add in that sugar, shall I do
Yeah.
that?
Still on a really high heat. And that's really nice now. So let's add the ghee. Traditionally in Indian desserts, we do use ghee, clarified butter. It kind of melts in your mouth, and I think that's what the Duchess and Prince Charles were quite wowed by when they tasted this. So right now I can see it's ready for the milk powder, and the milk powder makes it even creamier and more rich. And now you really have to work this with your arms.
Once the sugar, ghee, milk powder and carrots are cooked through, it's time for a hint of spice
Green cardamom powder.
and some crunch.
We're just going to add a little bit of pistachios and almonds. That looks good.
It is
And it
fantastic.
smells even better.
I'm happy with that.
Switch that off. And time to plate up. So I'm going to add a little bit of pistachio at the bottom of the bowl. And then some carrot pudding inside this bowl like this. Then what I'm going to do is carefully tilt it like this for it to come out. Put the
That's
ice
good,
cream
that.
in there, yeah. And that's my gajar halwa and ice cream done.
The perfect Diwali festival pudding, fit for a Maharaja or a British prince.
You can't have a festival, you can't have a feast at a festival without a sweet course. So, Anna, what are you going to do for us?
I'm going to make Yule log.
So, a royal family tradition. Apparently, they have their Christmas lunch at Sandringham. They go off for a walk, they come back, they watch the Queen doing the Christmas message, and then they sit down to Yule log.
Yule log. I
So
thought
how
you
do
were
you
going to say
do it?
that they made it. I was like, God, these royals are great. No, they just eat it.
Well, maybe sometimes they do, who knows?
So the first thing I'm going to make is actually the last thing we're going to put on the log, because we need it to be cooled and set enough so that we can work it on
So
top
you do
of
it first.
We
And
do
what
it
is
first.
that? What are you doing?
This is a ganache. Ganache is like a thick emulsion of chocolate and cream.
Woo, woo.
So our cream is coming up to the boil, and this is essentially what's going to melt our chocolate. I'm going to pour that over the top.
Okay. And this has to cool.
Next, I'm going to make the actual sponge.
Right.
So I need to crack my 5 eggs.
Every culture's got a midwinter festival, haven't they? And in the Norse countries, the midwinter festival, they actually had a log. They'd get a log covered with holly and ivy, and they'd burn it. And the idea is that the smoke would somehow cleanse the atmosphere of the evil spirits or the events of the previous year. It was a way of moving a transition from the old year to the new year. Rather nice idea. And this kind of duplicates that, I suppose.
That's quite fascinating.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
We're going to whisk this up into a beautiful sabion, where you whisk eggs and sugar on a high speed, and this dissolves the sugar into the eggs and adds lots
of air, fluffing the whole thing up,
That's
making the resulting sponge very, very light.
Light, exactly.
You hope. Okay.
You hope too, because I'm assuming you
Yeah.
want to eat it.
Well, if you press me. Oh, look, it's really getting...
Yes. Looking pretty good now. Yeah, I think we're good now.
Surely it must be done.
Yeah, it looks good now. Let's have a look. Yeah.
Yep. It's done.
Okay.
Well done.
So now I'm going to fold in the...
Shall I handle this?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm going to fold in all our dry ingredients. Cocoa. some flour,
Mm-hmm.
and our mixed spices, which gives it like a little secret hint of flavour. And you just want to fold that through.
Yeah, don't beat the air out of it.
We do not want
Just
to beat
fold.
the air out of it. So
Okay,
I'm
now
gonna
what?
pour it
Hang on, I'll
in.
make some room.
Oh,
There
thank
we
you,
go.
Michael. Okay, so I'm going to pour it in.
Yep.
I think that looks quite enough. It's going to rise a little bit.
Yeah.
So you don't want it
You don't want it to
thick.
overflow when it
No.
rises.
Okay, so if you wouldn't mind popping that in the oven for me for...
Now let me guess, temperature 180 degrees?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, it just came to me in a flash.
And for 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10
okay.
minutes.
Okay.
Wonderful. So now I'm going to finish the ganache.
The chocolate's melted, look, hasn't it?
That's
it's
it.
Lovely, great long black streaks. Does the butter give it that shine, or is it inherent in the chocolate, do you think?
It's a bit of both, but yes, I think that the butter does increase the glossy look of the
Yeah.
beautiful ganache. I'm just going to put a little splash of the rum. Now I'm going to make the filling. I'm going to whip some cream and some sugar.
Yep.
And then I'm going to add some chestnut puree and some rum to that after.
Oh, chestnut puree.
The French love it at
Yeah.
Christmas time.
And this is Christmas. We're talking festivals. We're
Yeah.
talking Christmas. We're talking Yule.
I'm just going to let that whisk,
Mhm.
and I'm going to add a little bit of rum to my chestnut puree to loosen it up.
Modest, I'd call it. Modest. This is getting a lovely consistency
Yeah,
in here,
it's
isn't
looking
it?
pretty good.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep, well done. Oh, yeah. Pretty smooth in every way.
Yep.
Okay.
Now.
And then you put, right.
Okay, so that's our
Really good.
chestnut cream.
Okay.
Now, I'd say it's about 10 minutes now. You want to
10
check
minutes?
the sponge?
No, you're absolutely right. I'll go and get it. My word, it's hot.
Maybe
Ooh.
just place it down here. That
Yep,
would
yep,
be
yep,
great.
yep, yep, yep. Whee. There we
Okay.
go.
So the key is that you want to roll this while it is hot.
Ah.
Because if you roll it while it's cold, it will crack.
It'll split.
Yep, okay, so I want to quickly...
But you've got to do it pretty quickly before it,
Pretty
before it
quickly.
cools down.
Yes.
Okay. Oh.
And then take our grease proof off.
There we go. Yeah.
So I want to just be really careful as I'm folding it over. Then I just keep rolling it and rolling it
Under the cloth.
under the cloth.
But you've forgotten to stick the stuff in.
Well, this is too hot now. I can't put the cream in it. But
right.
earlier on, I did roll one. So I'm going to leave
There is
this
a
one
convention to
here.
these things, isn't there?
And I'm going to take this one out.
So this you did earlier,
Yeah.
equally successfully.
Equally successful. So I'm just going to put the cream
This
in
is the
this
bit you
now.
like, isn't
I
it?
do, yeah, this is great.
When you're sticking the goodies into it.
That's it, yeah. And you want to be quite generous.
Yeah.
A little bit might...
There's no point in scrimping, is
Exactly.
there? At Christmas time with a Yule log.
Okay, just give it a little squeeze and then we'll just roll all the way to here.
It's not the oldest of our puddings, you know.
No?
No. I think we traditional Christmas pudding, plum pudding. It was another royal, George I. His first Christmas as King of England in 1714. He ordered up plum pudding, and we've been eating plum pudding at Christmas ever since.
Yeah.
But this is the Sandringham favourite.
And all I want to do now is that if you see that I'm just kind of running my palette knife along to make it look a little bit more like a log.
Like a log. So you're making it look like bark. are you?
Exactly,
Yeah.
like bark.
God, you're an artist, really.
I don't think this is art, I think this is cooking.
Oh.
Okay, that
Right.
looks like a log.
That's it? Is it
think.
finished?
Yeah, I'm just going to serve it with some strawberries, just a few berries. And now I need to go through the nail-biting.
Do you want a hand?
No, I'm just about
Oh, you're getting
good
cocky now.
to
You're
go.
getting very, very cocky.
I wouldn't say that was cocky. There's a lot of fear there.
Was there? You didn't show it.
Okay, and we put some strawberries.
Throw a few straws.
Yeah, might cut them.
Okay?
Yeah.
Just make it look good.
Maybe a little dusting of icing sugar. And there you have it. Yule log with the chestnut cream. Would you like a slice?
I think that's what they call a rhetorical question. Come on, let's have a go.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. You grab your plate there.
I've got a plate here.
Wonderful.
Very much to hand.
Okay.
Oh, kicking the cutlery. There we are. That's nice.
That looks good. Would you like a little strawberry on the side?
I would. Oh, yeah. Yes. Really light. The chestnut. It's a really brilliant thing to have at Christmas, whether you're at Sandringham or somewhere perhaps less exalted. Hello, I'm Michael Burke. Welcome to a brand new series of royal recipes. This time, we're at Westonbirt House, formerly a grand country house, now a boarding school, which has played host to royal visitors for over 100 years. In this series, we're delving even further back in time to reveal over 600 years of royal food heritage. You play Anne Boleyn, and I will play Henry VIII.
And we've been busy unlocking the secrets of Britain's great food archives, discovering rare and unseen recipes that have been royal favourites through the ages. From the earliest royal cookbook in 1390...
It's so precious, so special that I'm not allowed to touch it.
...to Tudor treats from the court of Henry VIII.
I can't wait for this. 1, 2, 3.
We'll be exploring the great culinary traditions enjoyed by the royal family, from the grand to the groundbreaking, as well as the surprisingly simple.
I did think that was going to be a disaster.
As we hear from a host of royal chefs.
Prince Philip would walk past or pop his head in and say, "What's for dinner? What are we having?" Oh yeah, it's not just a normal kitchen.
And meet the people who provide for the royal table.
It's OK for the Queen, it's OK for everyone.
Welcome to Royal Recipes.
This time on Royal Recipes, we'll be looking at breakfast traditions down the generations as we discover how the royal family enjoy perhaps the most important meal of the day.
Coming up...
Imagine eating all this kind of stuff for breakfast.
Chef Anna Haar rustles up an Edwardian full English.
Oh, perfect.
Never doubt me, Michael.
Paul Ainsworth gets a flavour of just what makes a royally good breakfast brew.
I'd have that any day over a cup of coffee. That is amazing.
And we catch a rare glimpse of some of the oldest cookbooks from the royal kitchen.
There are ingredients like herons and porpoises. This really is a different time of eating.
Hello and welcome to the Royal Recipes Kitchen. With me is Executive Chef Anna Haar. There's an old saying, isn't there, Anna, that you should breakfast like a king, you should lunch like a prince, but you should dine like a pauper. Now, which of those are you going to do today?
I'm going to do part of an Edwardian full breakfast.
Now, that is a challenge. I mean, this is an Edwardian full breakfast. Edwardian, of course, the Edward is Edward VII. He'd have chicken, he'd have poussin, he'd have guinea fowl, he'd have woodcock in season. He'd have what they call meat in jelly. I think this is pigeon in aspic. All that, and you're going to do a boiled egg.
Now, Michael, not just any boiled egg. I'm going to do œuf en cocotte with smoked haddock.
Wow. OK,
So-
doesn't sound like an anticlimax. How do you do it?
The first thing I'm going to do is poach my natural smoked haddock.
OK, that's not very yellow, is it?
Well, no. If it's yellow, some food colouring has been added. So I'm just going to poach this. This won't take long, maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
What are you poaching it in?
I'm poaching it in, just give my hands a bit of a wash. I'm poaching it in some milk, drop of cream, some peppercorns and 1 bay leaf. So I'm going to chop some chives while I wait for that to cook.
I rather ridiculed it as just a boiled egg, but it's quite a substantial dish in itself, this. I mean, imagine eating all this kind of stuff, as well as the œuf en cocotte, for breakfast.
I can't.
Breakfast has evolved so much down the centuries, hasn't it? When
Yeah.
you had the early Hanoverian kings in the 18th century,
They would have breakfasted off cold meat and cheese and beer. Well,
Beer.
the water wasn't very safe, so that was a good excuse for having beer at breakfast. And then when you got into the later Hanoverians, the Prince Regent, he'd have cake and hot chocolate and loads of booze. When he died, he was 24 stone, you know.
Oh, my goodness.
Built like a barrel.
I'm not surprised if he was eating cake and booze for breakfast.
But it wasn't until the Victorians that we really started to get the modern breakfast and bacon and eggs and all that sort of stuff. But Bertie, later Edward VII, he went in for things in a big way. Is that boiling over?
No, it's just about to come up now. I'm going to take it off. And the liquid...
You live dangerously, Andy. You live dangerous.
The liquid that we're actually cooking the haddock in, we're going to make a bechamel sauce with.
I like bechamel sauce. Originally done by a French aristocrat and named after a financier in Louis XIV's court. You're meant to say, do you know everything, Michael?
Do you know everything, Michael?
No, but I can look it up. Oh, guess what? There's butter in this dish.
Absolutely.
Bechamel sauce is basically butter and flour.
Into a roux. And then you cook the roux out just for a few minutes. And then you pour hot liquid on top. So that's kind of a really important part. It's a common mistake that people make, that they think bechamel is just they pour their cold milk on top of it. And what you'll get is a lumpy bechamel.
It's a lovely creamy sauce, though, isn't it?
It is a lovely creamy sauce, and it's extremely versatile. So I'm just going to stir in probably about half of this, I'd say.
So that is warmed milk.
Yes, this is the actual poaching liquid that we cooked our haddock in. So this will be a slightly thicker bechamel than I would normally make, because the juices that are going to come out of the fish when it cooks
Need soaking up, do they? Yeah.
So that's done now. That's cooked out.
Silky smooth.
So I'm going to add almost all of this to the bowl, but I'm going to save a little bit back.
Why?
Because I'm going to top it up at the end. So now we're going to flake our fish.
Into the bechamel?
Yes.
You don't want to scrunch it up too much, do you?
No, you want to keep
it. It does come apart beautifully, doesn't it, into those haddock flakes. It's wonderful fish, haddock, isn't it?
It is a wonderful fish, and the smell of that is just such a nice, mellow, pleasing smoked fish. It's not like a smack in the face that some of those kind of artificially smoked and dyed haddock can be like. So I'll just give it a gentle fold.
So this is going in the bottom?
This is going in the bottom of our cocottes.
Now, is cocotte the dish?
Cocotte is the dish, but a cocotte can be a number of different dishes. It doesn't have to be just a dish with a handle. It could just be like a large ramekin.
But it has to be this, more or less this size?
More or less this size, and always round, I think, as well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't want corners, because you wouldn't be able to get it. Get it your lovely sauce, or some of it would escape into the corner. You wouldn't get your spoon in there.
That's it.
And that would be a real shame, wouldn't it?
Now we're going to crack our beautiful duck eggs. These lovely big eggs.
Do they have to be duck eggs?
They don't have to be.
What's the advantage?
Duck eggs are bigger.
There's another definition of cocotte, you know?
Oh, yeah?
It's a French slang term for a lady of the night.
Oh, really?
Anyway, we won't go into that.
Some Parmesan just on top.
Now that's going to give it a real
Absolutely.
hit of flavour, isn't it?
Absolutely. So it goes into a bain-marie, which already has hot water in it, and this will help kind of speed up the process.
Right, so you've already boiled some water a little bit beforehand, so it doesn't have to come up from cold.
Exactly.
Okay. And a bain-marie, it's a bath.
Exactly.
Mary's bath.
So if you wouldn't mind popping it into the oven.
And it's hot, you say, so I better take one of these.
Yes, so it's already hot. So, one last piece I nearly forgot. Oh, Anna.
Don't forget.
Don't forget. I'm going to put a little bit of...
you saved some of the sauce.
A little bit more sauce to go on top. I just don't want to waste any of this. Just go around the edges.
Resorted to the whisk now.
Yes, I have. If I'm not beating something up, I'm not happy, Michael.
No, I've noticed this. You're a rather aggressive woman on the quiet, I think.
Oh, dear.
I wouldn't like to get on the wrong side of your whisk.
Okay, so a little bit just on top.
That's a clever idea, though, isn't it?
Thank you for saying so, Michael. So if you want to pop that in the oven, you'll find
hot.
another one already in there that you can bring back.
Okay.
Oven should be at 170 degrees,
170.
and we'd cook that for 10, maybe 12 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Don't burn yourself.
yeah, thanks very much. They look really, really good.
Okay, that's great news.
It's a race against time, this.
Nice work.
There we go.
Nice work. So we're going to finish it with some chives.
Mhm.
And I'm actually going to finish it with just a little bit more Parmesan. I can't help
It's a rather
myself.
nice touch. I love Parmesan too.
Okay,
Yep.
now,
Better take them out.
yep, 1, 2, 3. Ooh. And I have some toast that I have
That
just
looks
prepared
good.
for you. So, would you like me to cut them into soldiers for you, since it's breakfast?
Oh, yes, please. Great. Terrific. You have a soldier.
Okay.
I have a soldier. We'll stand to attention. After you.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. Do you know, I thought for a moment they were hard-boiled. You know, I thought you...
Never doubt
a
me,
bit much.
Michael.
I've learned that. I've learned that. I'm going to balance it on there. The fishy taste has come up, even though I didn't get any fish that time. Love the bechamel. Love the eggy. I'm going to eat them separately. Great combination. I don't think I'll have room for the guinea fowl, the capons, the chickens, the woodcock. Who needs that when you've got œuf en cocotte with smoked haddock? A breakfast fit for a king. A staple of the royal breakfast table today is a good cup of tea, a tradition that was established by the middle of the 18th century.
A homegrown cuppa has tickled the taste buds of one of our modern-day royals. Michelin-starred chef Paul Ainsworth is in Cornwall to find out more about this regal brew.
200 years ago, when society's most fashionable members began to take to tea, no one would have ever imagined that one day we'd be growing our own. But that's exactly what's happening right here, just up the road from where I live.
The tea plant is actually a variety of camellia called Camellia sinensis. Britain's first tea plantation is in the Botanical Gardens on the Tregothnan estate near Truro. Jonathan Jones is the man behind the 100-acre project.
So when did you plant the first tea, and how's that evolved over the centuries?
Well, the first camellias for ornamental purposes over 2 centuries ago, but the first camellia for tea was actually only in 1999. The first tea was produced from that and sold in 2005. You know, we've been able to put the Englishness into English tea for the first time, you know, create the most British tea in history. And people thought, well, who cares about tea? But if you're British, it's what's in our veins almost.
We grow up with it, don't we?
We Brits might drink a lot of tea, but it's only in the last 20 years that we've started growing it. And the success of the plantation here is partly due to the Cornish weather.
Why is the climate so good here for growing tea?
If you look at our daily weather temperature, we're usually warmer than Darjeeling in India, which is kind of the champagne of tea. So we have lots of things growing here, bigger and better than they actually do in the Himalayas.
The estate here has been owned by one family, the Boscowans, for nearly 700 years. Renowned as botanical innovators, they cultivated the UK's first outdoor camellias. So it's no surprise they pioneered British tea growing. But before Paul gets to try a brew, there's picking to be done.
Hard work, but therapeutic, isn't it? It is.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you very much. Is there a cup of tea at the end of this?
definitely is,
I hope so. So, Jonathan, have you come to the attention of the royal family?
Yes. In fact, the royals drink a lot of tea and they love it. And this bush right here was planted by Prince Philip. And 6 or 8 weeks ago, we processed this specially for him, presented it as the most royal tea ever grown in the UK. And the taste was amazing, thank goodness. And he actually said, tastes like tea.
Once the tea leaves are plucked, for a black tea, they're allowed to wither before being rolled and then dried.
And the smell should be great, isn't it?
Man, yeah, that's amazing.
The amount of rolling and drying is one factor in determining how the tea will taste.
I imagine even like that, you could pour some hot water over that, let it infuse.
That would be quite green.
Yeah.
But if you kept it a few hours, in fact, accidentally, I often put it in my pocket or my coat pocket, and the next morning I think, where's that tea smell coming from?
Please tell me you take it out of your pocket,
I do.
put it in a cup and have a cup of tea, do you? Yes!
Of course I do.
From bush to cup, the process of making black tea can be as little as 36 hours. Paul and Jonathan have a selection of homegrown teas to mix together to make a breakfast brew.
It doesn't look very strong, but this will blow their socks off. So a little bit of that.
It's a punchy, complex tea that can withstand a dash of milk and compete with coffee.
We've got now 6 or so different gardens in here from around the estate. We put a little bit of Assam in there, about 5 to 10% of Assam leaf from Assam itself, from Kongia.
Yeah.
And that should complete the blend and be a true breakfast tea. Fit for royalty, in fact.
So tell me, Jonathan, other than Prince Philip planting a bush here, what other royal connections are there?
Prince Charles the other day, in fact, only on Tuesday, tasted some of our new breakfast tea.
Does he have a favourite?
Earl Grey. He loves it with honey. So now we've got this infused, let's see what we've got. And this liquor looking good.
Yeah.
And the smell.
That is amazing.
So now we have to taste. Go ahead.
You are a master. That was all by eye as well. That is lovely. I'm sorry, but I'd have that any day over a cup of coffee.
Fantastic, the result.
Yeah, I would. That is amazing.
A breakfast tea that makes a stir in Buckingham Palace and gets the Paul Ainsworth seal of approval. How can we possibly top that? A recipe combining coffee, bacon and polenta might just do it.
Anna, you've got a dish now that doesn't use tea, it uses coffee. The other thing that gets people up in the mornings. What are you going to do?
That's right.
Can I take your tea?
I'm going to do coffee and maple glazed bacon, which is a really good brunch dish.
Brunch. Not breakfast, but brunch.
Exactly.
So, how does it go?
So I'm going to roast some tomatoes first. So I'll cut them in half.
Now, this goes well with bacon. What's the story here?
Well, this absolutely goes well with bacon. I think it's the kind of natural sweetness of tomatoes that make the saltiness of the bacon sing. So they're a good marriage.
Well, bacon, you know, it's kind of everybody's favourite breakfast thing, you know, butties in the morning and everything. I mean, not just us, but the royals as well. You remember Prince Harry was best man at William's wedding? Well, he was put in charge of some of the wedding festivities and all that sort of stuff, particularly the following morning, where he organised very special bacon butties for what I think he called the party survivors. The bacon was special because it was called pea meal bacon. It was cured with ground dried peas. But it used to, in the olden days, be a way of curing bacon before refrigeration, so you could ship it abroad. And that's what they had the morning after the wedding. But you're doing something slightly different.
That's right, yeah. So I've just seasoned the tomatoes before we pop them in the oven.
Okay.
And I'm going to put a little bit of pepper on them, which is quite nice.
Yep.
And some thyme, just over the top. You don't have to do much, just leave the thyme over the top of the tomatoes so they'll just kind of infuse with the flavour.
Right.
But what's really important is a drizzling of olive oil. So this will actually help the thyme kind of get inside the tomato.
Kind of infuse the tomato. So this go in the oven?
Yeah, if you want to pop that in the oven,
Yeah.
it should be at 180 and I think about 6 to 8 minutes.
Okay,
Should be done.
6 to 8 minutes?
Yeah.
Here we go. Right,
Okay.
where's the bacon?
So yeah, we're just heating up our pan. The pan needs to be really hot.
That bacon smells
Smells
wonderful.
really good.
Now
Good
this is
smoked
streaky bacon, isn't it?
Yes, I'm a big fan of streaky bacon. The ratio of fat and meat just makes it so much more tasty.
Oh, and it smells so wonderful, doesn't it?
Yep.
There's something about bacon in particular.
Yeah. Good quality bacon.
Yeah.
You can always tell by the water content that's in it. So if this was a lesser quality bacon, by now, water would be coming out of it, where you can still see that this smoke that's coming off is that it's frying.
We've become, you know, really quite keen on going out for breakfast and brunch. Apparently we spend £76 million a day going out for breakfast and brunch.
A day?
A day.
So I'm going to strain off a little bit of this fat.
Yeah.
But also, I'm going to add the coffee in now.
Now, is that just the flavour, or what's the story with the coffee?
I really believe that coffee is a great flavour to go with bacon. Not too much. Not too much. But yes, when I would ever cure my own bacon at home, I would always put coffee and maple in the cure.
And what is it about the combination of those two flavours, do you think, that...
Well, I actually think maple tastes of coffee. If you have a smell there,
Yeah, well.
I actually think maple is a similar flavour as coffee.
Yes, there is something similar to it. Yeah, I'd never thought of that before. And it all says breakfast.
Yeah.
That's looking really
Yeah,
nice.
this is looking good. These are just about ready. Actually, maybe we should check on those tomatoes.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
How do they look?
They look pretty good to me. Yep. Yeah, look at this.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. Colour. And they smell nice too. Where do you want them? Here? There?
On that board,
On
it'd
this
be
one?
perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
So next, I'm going to make the polenta.
Right.
There's lots of different ways to make polenta. So today, I'm going to make it with chicken stock.
Yeah. White chicken?
And a little bit of butter. I just think the flavour goes really well with bacon. But perhaps closer to dinner time, you might want to add more dairy, maybe a bit of milk, some parmesan, things like that, a heavier version of it.
But this is a lighter one.
But this is a lighter, bruncher version.
Now, tell me what you have to watch out for with polenta.
Well, you need to be fast when you first add it in, and then it's about kind of stirring it every so often to make sure that it's fully cooked. I'm going to put a pinch of salt in our stock for seasoning, and you want to bring your liquid up to boil. So I'm going to shoot the polenta in really quickly and just give it a whisk. And
The one thing you don't do gradually, eh?
no.
Important to really stir it around and whisk it up at this stage? Why?
Yeah, because you don't want it to go lumpy.
You can almost see the polenta sucking the liquid in, can't
That's
you?
it. Thickening up almost immediately.
Oh, gosh, yes, look at that.
As it starts to thicken,
Yeah.
I'll start to add in a little bit of butter.
Well, it's all the
Gives
butter.
it a bit more richness.
Oh, I think it's looking good, though, Anna.
Yeah, it is looking pretty good.
Done?
Done. Right, we are ready to serve.
Oh, OK.
Okay, so
Oh, yes, look at the way it's sliding gracefully down, isn't it?
it. And we have our
then they-
beautiful crispy glazed bacon, which is what you always want. And then we have our tomatoes.
Oh, that's terrific, isn't it?
Yeah.
And would you have this with some crusty bread or what?
Absolutely. Crusty bread, nice cup of tea.
Well, I was thinking more of a glass of wine if it was brunch.
And then just to reinforce that lovely thyme flavour, a little bit of thyme on top.
Oh, terrific.
Are you ready?
I am more than ready.
Now,
OK.
there you have it. You have coffee and maple glazed bacon.
With polenta. After you.
Okay.
I love bacon.
Yeah, so do I.
Can I get in there? Oh, that's really nice, isn't it? The bacon has got that marvellous bacon tang. It's just an overlay of glazing and sweetness. A bit of the tomato for another bit of freshness. And the thyme is just wonderful. There's a taste on the top. Fabulous for brunch. Fabulous for the survivors of a royal wedding party. That's what I'm going to have for breakfast next.
Rich and luxurious, this is a royally tasty upscaling of that great breakfast staple, the bacon butty.
A good bacon sandwich requires good bread. And Prince Charles, it seems, is very particular about his bread.
Carolyn Robb, a former private chef to the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children, remembers rising to the challenge to cook the family's favourite loaf.
Today I'm making soda bread, which is a great favourite of mine, and it brings back a lot of fond memories from making it at Highgrove for the Prince of Wales. It was his favourite bread, and it was something that we always had around. It's really quick, just mix everything together and it goes straight into the oven. First of all, I'm putting the plain white flour in. Sieve that through. Okay, I'm also going to sieve the malted granary flour, although it's got bits in it. It's still good just to pop it through the sieve. And before I put that through, I'm also going to add in 2 teaspoons of bicarb. And I'm going to sieve this now. I'm going to add in a teaspoon of salt. I've got some nice sea salt crystals. Now I'm going to put the fresh herbs in. Some thyme. It was one of the nicest things about making bread at Highgrove, meant you could leave the kitchen for a while and go out in the garden to pick some fresh herbs, which I always really enjoyed. Next, I'm going to add in some chives. Obviously, chives bring a slightly oniony flavour to the bread, but it's quite subtle. Now I've added the herbs in. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of butter. Now, the last thing to do is to add in the liquid. Most breads, you spend a lot of time kneading it, whereas with this bread, it's the opposite. We don't want to overwork it. So the less handling it has, the more soft the bread will be. So I'm just going to mix this in with a knife. This is buttermilk. If you can't get buttermilk or don't have any, it does work with yoghurt or yoghurt and milk as well. And it's really important that once the liquid's been added, we work really quickly. As soon as you do that, the bicarb starts to activate. I'm going to tip the dough out onto the board and finish off working it by hand. It's a fine line between getting it just right and just too sticky or just too dry. Another thing I really enjoyed about making this bread was that the flour that we used came from Shipton Mill. They used to mill the wheat from Highgrove there, so it was very special to be able to go out and buy bags of flour where you knew that the wheat was actually homegrown. Never used such good flour as that anywhere else.
Once Carolyn has shaped the dough into a large ball, she places it on a buttered baking sheet.
I'm going to slash it that way.
And cuts a traditional cross into the dough.
And the same again.
Before sprinkling it with sesame seed and linseed. She then pops it into a preheated oven at 200 degrees Celsius.
Dead dog. Oh, Pippi.
The soda bread is baked for 30 to 40 minutes until golden.
I'm just going to test to see if this is cooked. The way we do that is turn it upside down and tap it. And it makes a really nice hollow sound, so we know that that's cooked. When I made the bread for Prince Charles, we would either make it into sandwiches. He had a very special sandwich that he always had at lunchtime. Really delicious with homemade pesto and parmesan. Otherwise, it was used for toast. It looks perfect inside. So you can see a little bit of mottling from the fresh herbs in the bread, and you can also see the nice crunchy bits from the malted granary flour. The only way to really test this is to try a piece, which I will do now. And I do love warm bread. It's very difficult to stop at one piece when it's just out of the oven. That's really nostalgic. That takes me back, that lovely smell of thyme and the malted granary flour. Definitely takes me back to my time in the kitchens at Highgrove.
There's an endless fascination, isn't there, Anna, with these glimpses into the inner workings of the royal family?
Yeah, I think people want to kind of feel like they're real human, or they can see similarities in them and their family, and that makes them feel, I guess, more connected.
Different from us, though. I mean, if you get into some of their tastes and everything, Prince Charles is said to have, anyway, whenever he goes away, have a breakfast box with 6 kinds of honey in it. That's pretty picky and fastidious.
Yes, it is, but maybe I'm a little bit like Charles. I like to bring tea wherever I go.
Oh, you do?
Yes, I do. So, you know...
What kind of tea?
Tea from home, the same tea that I drank when I
Irish
was
tea.
a young girl, yeah.
But it actually, we tend to think this is all very modern, you know, the mass media and what Prince Charles does and all that sort of stuff. But we actually know quite a lot about what Queen Victoria liked and didn't like, because her diaries were published. I mean, she liked, for instance, something called Brussels biscuits. Now, what are they?
It's kind of similar to a biscotti. It's a twice-baked biscuit.
Twice-baked biscuit?
Yeah, so it's like
pretty
crunch.
snappy and crunchy.
Yeah.
Another thing she liked, apparently, was marrow. I'm not talking about, you know, the sort of monster
vegetable?
bullying
No.
courgette. Actually, these things.
Yeah.
Now, marrow on toast.
Delicious. Instead of butter, marrow on toast. Perfect.
It feels as though we know a lot more today about royal domestic life because of, I know, the newspapers, the radio, the television, and their interest. But excerpts from Queen Victoria's diaries were published during her lifetime. And these documents fulfilled much the same purpose in the past as they do today. Royal PR.
Revealing selected tidbits about her favourite snacks was a way of giving the nation the tiniest peek behind the palace walls. But it wasn't the first time the lid had been ever so carefully lifted on the secrets of the royal kitchen. Social historian Dr. Polly Russell went to the British Library to leaf through a regal cookbook from 1655.
This beautiful little book here is called The Queen's Closet Opened, and it was written by someone called W.M. Now, the Queen that it's referring to is Henrietta Maria, and its intent, aside from being a cookery book, was really to try and rehabilitate Henrietta Maria in the eyes of the nation. And what the book does is invite you into the most intimate, private space of the Queen. It was published in 1655, by which time Charles I had been executed, and Henrietta Maria was living in exile. But once Puritan rule had taken over in Britain, there was an opportunity to try and bring her back as a domestic goddess. There are 2 parts to this book in the first edition. The first is about medicinal remedies. The second part of the book was for conserving and preserving and making sweets. And some of the examples would be to candy suckets of oranges, lemons, citrons, and angelica. Well, given that sugar is fantastically expensive and that oranges and lemons would also have to be imported from abroad, you get a sense of how wealthy you would have to be able to make much of this food.
With the monarchy overthrown, it was the perfect time for some positive royal PR. The public's interest was piqued, and the book was a commercial triumph.
This small, very beautiful cookery book played its part in re-establishing the royal family. Amazingly, though, this isn't the first time that we have evidence of cookery being important in establishing the reputation of the royals. The British Library is also home to the oldest English cookery book in existence. It's so precious, so special, that I'm not allowed to touch it. Only a specially trained conservator can actually hold it. It's a 20-foot vellum scroll, vellum being calfskin, written by the scribes of Richard II in 1390. I mean, this is absolutely thrilling. Now, the scroll is called the Form of Curry, which was the medieval word for cookery. And this really is a document which takes us back into the medieval kitchen. There are 196 recipes, ingredients like cranes and herons and porpoises. I mean, this really is a different time of eating.
The 14th century was a tumultuous era. Up to half the population had been wiped out by the Black Death, and the Peasants' Revolt of 1381 had rattled the ruling classes. The scroll and its recipes were designed to emphasize the power of the royal family and cement the status quo.
There's a recipe for something called pomme d'orange, which was effectively a sort of pork meatball roasted and turned on a spit, while somebody would have painted it with a mixture made of spinach that would have effectively created a green ball that would have looked like an apple. And so these kind of games and trickery evidence that Richard II is powerful and clever and important.
Another book, featuring recipes from the court of the restored king, Charles II, was a reflection of the public's fascination with all things royal. Lamb's Royal Cookery, published in 1710, contains recipes from one of the longest-serving royal chefs of all time, Patrick Lamb.
There's a recipe here for olio. It involves a neck of mutton, pork, 6 whole cabbages, 2 dozen larks. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. And in the end, you pile it into some enormous sort of mountain of flesh and vegetables, and then you put hog's ears and trotters on the top. So lamb's food is absolutely about display. However, in amongst this extraordinary opulence, there's a recipe here for spinach toast. It involves cooking spinach and mixing that with eggs and topping that onto bread. So it sounds almost as though it could be a snack.
Featuring everything from the smallest dish to the most lavish banquet, books like these certainly had the potential to shape public opinion of the monarchy. And some of the recipes have stood the test of time, including a centuries-old royal snack, an apricot-glazed apple pastry.
Now, Anna, you're going to make a recipe from Patrick Lamb. Remember, he was the chef to 4 monarchs in the 17th century, produced a cookbook, got it here, didn't call them recipes, look, they were called receipts. In all the particular branches of cookery now in use in the Queen's palaces.
So I'm going to make taffety tart
Taffety
today.
tart.
It's a delicious, I guess you could say, snack, perfect for 11s. And the first thing that I'm going to make is the caramel to cook the apples. So I'm going to put the sugar into the pan. The pan is already quite hot now, so that it will hurry up the kind of caramel process. And then as it starts to melt, I will then add the butter. And then when the butter is melted, I will add our apples and we'll caramelize them down so they're nice and soft.
Although it's out of Patrick Lamb's sort of 17th century cookbook, I think it goes back a lot further than that, 100, 200 years earlier on, Tudor times, Henry VIII, Elizabeth, and all that kind of thing. Really old recipe, this.
But it's hard to believe that something with so much kind of technique could have been done all those years ago. So if you have a look at the pan now, you can see the caramel is changing colour.
Yeah.
And you can smell that kind of lovely caramel, buttery smell.
But you reckon it's pretty sophisticated for a very old recipe?
I would say this is pretty sophisticated.
Tough to do?
Well, can you do it, Michael? I'm sorry. Apples going in now. You can see lovely, hot, foaming caramel.
Yeah.
The apple's going to go in now.
Now, what apples are they?
These are Bramley apples, so they're quite tart. So as this is cooking down, I'm going to cut the pastry. Okay. So we have some puff pastry over here. Now, instead of using flour, we're actually going to use icing sugar.
Yeah, I saw you scattering the icing sugar.
So this is kind of I guess, another way of rolling pastry, but that it adds like just a little bit more sugar into the pastry, because traditionally puff pastry doesn't really have any sugar in it. So I'm going to just give it a little roll.
This is a snack for somebody with a sweet tooth, isn't it?
That's it.
That caramel and all this icing sugar and everything. There we go.
Okay, so I'm just going to cut it around.
All this sugar, of course, would have made it very, very expensive in 17th century and even 18th century terms.
Well, I think we take for granted the convenience that we can just buy a bag of sugar down the road.
Yeah.
But, I mean, where sugar came from back then wasn't just down the road, so it wasn't that easy just to get your hands on.
It was only the wealthy, really, wasn't it?
Absolutely. So I've cut the disc there, that's ready to go. So the apple will take probably, I'd say, another at least 5-10 minutes to cook down. When it's lovely and soft and brown, then you need to cool it completely. You can't make it with a hot mix.
What would happen if you tried?
Well, the pastry would fall apart. You know, the butter and the pastry would melt. So I actually have a bit of mix that I made earlier on. And all that I'm going to add to this now...
Oh, that's lovely. Brown,
yeah, nice and brown, caramelised. Well, it's going to smell even better now, and I add a little bit of lemon zest.
Mm-hmm.
So a bit of lemon zest goes in, just to give it a bit more kind of a perfume flavour, lift it a bit.
Yeah.
Give that a bit more. Okay. And now I'm going to give it a stir, and then I'm going to spoon the mix on.
Are you doing it exactly the way they did it in the 17th century, do you think? Would Patrick Lamb, if he was looking over your shoulder, saying, yeah, do it that way?
Well, this is my version, so I'm sure he would approve.
I'm sure he would approve.
Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more apple in it now. And then I'm just going to egg wash the edges to kind of seal the next layer on top.
That looks really rich, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it smells good. So you're going to place the top of the pastry
Yeah.
on top there. Just give it a little bit.
Make it all neat.
A little bit of pressure.
Yeah.
Okay.
That looks really, really good.
Then you place another sheet of greaseproof on top, and then your baking tray on top again, because you want to kind of give it a nice bit of pressure so it's lovely and flat. And Michael...
But it's relatively simple, isn't it? I mean,
It is,
Patrick
yeah.
Lamb did these fantastically elaborate coronation dinners and everything, but this was when he was just doing snacks.
Yeah, well, for a snack, I think it's still quite an elaborate snack. If you think this is, instead of having a simple biscuit at, 11 o'clock, that this is, a bit of work, puff pastry, caramelise your apples.
A super chef's dish. Fit for a queen?
Fit for a queen. So we're going to bake that in the oven at about 180 degrees for 20 to 30 minutes.
OK, now what are you up to?
So our glaze has come up to boil now, so this is ready.
That looks wonderfully gloopy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's delicious. A little bit of apricot glaze. OK, so I'm just going to brush this on top. And this just gives it a lovely shine, gives it a lovely finish.
It's going to make a mess, though, isn't it?
Well, I don't think so. I think we might fare
All
well
down the
with
front,
this.
you know. I think the dark jumper is perhaps a big mistake.
OK, so give this a nice... Oh, doesn't that sound good?
Wow.
Nice crunch.
Yep.
This looks good.
Well, I'd rather have this than a ginger biscuit at 11 o'clock.
So what goes very nice with this is some caramelised apple, which is lovely.
A little bit of even more sweetener.
But these are sweet apples. These aren't Bramley apples that we're garnishing this with. And then we're going to have a little bit of clotted cream.
Not for slimmers, this one, is it?
No, certainly not. And there you have it. Taffety tart with caramelised apples and clotted cream.
Why taffety, by the way?
Well, I think it got its name from taffeta, the material, because it was similar in appearance. It was lovely and kind of smooth and had this kind of crisp, stiff kind of texture of it.
OK.
Oh, dear.
How do we get at it?
Spoons. Here we are.
I've got a knife.
OK.
Yep.
Shall I go in first?
All right.
I'm sorry, Michael.
No. Chivalrous to the end.
I just love the crunch of that. The sound is just glorious. That is so good. You can have a nice little spoon there, Michael.
That's smaller than your spoon, I notice.
That way I can have more. That's delicious. The caramelised apple is just perfect.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Oh, try it with the clotted cream.
I have. In fact, I'm going to try it again. I should have said I haven't. Oh, it's squidgy but flaky. Come on, you little beauty. Oh, with recipes like this, you can quite see why he was a chef to 4 monarchs. All the way from the 17th century, but perfect for today. Have it for 11's, skip lunch. Join us next time for more royal recipes.